Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto left tied to the log in chunin exams. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Time of Rapture and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto sighed as he looked down at his feet outside of the academy. He had been assigned to the team consisting of himself, Sasuke and Sakura. He originally thought it was going to be a blast. A team with his crush and a person he admired. Of course he would never admit the later. He wasn't even sure he admired him. Maybe it was jealousy. Sasuke had everything he wanted. People loved him, screamed his name, and he could just shrug it off as if it didn't even faze him. Naruto had already put up with 5 years of girls screaming "We love you Sasuke-kun." Like he was some sort of rock star. The problem was his crush had her own crush on Sasuke, as did every girl in his graduating class. Naruto liked to think he was mentally more mature than other kids his age. He had tried to humble himself like the only father figure he really had in his life, the third Hokage. However, it was tough. You can't really be humble about things when you have grown up with nothing. He tried to practice being humble and having a positive outlook on things ever since the third Hokage told him it would be a good thing for him to work on. The problem was he couldn't walk down the street and see fine children walking down the street with only a single parent. You can tell which children had lost their mothers and fathers in combat by the look in their eyes. The third had told him that there is always something he has that others don't, and it made him special. However, he couldn't see it. Those kids at least had a parent. He had no one. He idly wondered if the special thing he had was really just a demon that terrorized his village 12 years ago, and his biggest known enemy just decided to tell him about it yesterday. It was pathetic honestly. How would anyone ever accept him? Hi, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. I have no friends. My only ninja skill even worth mentioning is the Kage Bushin. By the way, I have a demon inside of me that likely killed all your family members 12 years ago. He muttered to himself. He suddenly heard footsteps that instantly caused his eyes to widen. They didn't hear that, did they? He silently asked himself in panic. Geez, you really are weird, Naruto. Honestly, who sits on a swing all alone talking to themselves? Anyways, where is Sasuke? A blonde asked. She seemed to be annoyed. Her shoes had dirt all over them. It quickly led him to believe that she had been searching for Sasuke for a while. I don't know, Ino, I'm not Sasuke's keeper. Naruto said, frustratedly rolling his eyes as he leaned on the right rope of the swing. Ino glared at Naruto. What the hell is your problem? Asked all of a sudden, causing Naruto to quickly stare up at her. She was tapping her foot impatiently as she glared at him. Naruto chose that moment to let his anger out on her. My problem? What the fuck do you mean my problem? His problem? She had been his tormentor the entire time he had been at the academy. She always hit him and made his day shitty. So did Sakura. A voice in his head whispered to him in a seductive, intoxicating voice. Naruto grit his teeth, forcing out the voice. My problem is everyone. Especially you. You made my entire education at the academy utter hell. Every day you will run into class, screaming, eventually hitting me over taking your seat. What seat? There were no fucking names on the damn seats. Every day, I will arrive first to class, followed by Sasuke. Sasuke will sit next to me, and you will end up pushing me out of my seat and hitting me because I stole your seat. So no, fuck that. My problem. My problem is you self-centered pain in the ass. What is your deal with Sasuke anyways? He isn't that special. Naruto was panting after his anger-induced rant. Ino quickly wiped back a tear asking, why would you say that? She asked, quickly wiping back another. Naruto refused to answer. He would likely blow up again at her, starting with "It's the truth." Naruto shrugged as Ino spoke up again, and Sasuke is special. He is cute, mysterious, and is the strongest ninja in the academy. Ha! I can kick that bastard's ass any day. Naruto said scathingly. Ino looked alarmed before quickly standing up straight, holding back tears. No, you can't, Naruto Baka. Stop trying to pretend you can't. Every academy duel you ever had with him you lost. The next time you beat Sasuke, I will be your slave for a week. Naruto perked up at this. That idea caught his attention. A week with a friend, with company. Regardless of it being by force, he had never had anyone his age spend time with him. Fine, is that a bet? Naruto asked, eyes narrowing. Ino looked rather alarmed at that. She hadn't expected him to even consider it after boasting about Sasuke's wins over Naruto. However, if she backed down now in fear of being Naruto's slave, it meant that she didn't believe that Sasuke could beat Naruto without so much as second thought. If she backed down, then she was acknowledging that Naruto was actually a match for Sasuke. Why yes, that is a bet. If you lose you have to be my slave for a week, and if you win I will be yours for a week. Her voice was a bit shaky at that start, however she couldn't let any lack of confidence in her crush show. Naruto's eyes were just so unnerving to her. Naruto outstretched his left hand from his seat on the swing. Fine. Ino slowly put her hand in Naruto's grasp and shook it. The deal was made between the two Konoha shinobi. Naruto stood up, let's go find the team. He said with a grunt as he stood and began walking to the direction of the docks. Ino yelled out, his name is Sasuke. Naruto shrugged, several yards ahead of her, I don't care. Naruto was right. He knew exactly where Sasuke hung around, and it was easy to find. Hell, he wasn't even obsessed like Sasuke's fangirls were, and even he knew Sasuke took to hanging around his house and the dock near training grounds. Thinking about it was rather funny since Ino had spent time trying to find the boy, and Naruto found him relatively instantly. Naruto walked down the hill quickly with quick short steps, hey asshole. Let's go. Naruto threw a pebble at Sasuke's back, which in turn hit him in the head. Sasuke turned around to see none other than Naruto standing there with a glare on his face, and a ways behind Naruto on the hill was Ino cautiously walking down. Naruto didn't hesitate to charge at Sasuke, who simply jumped over him and bounced a bit backwards moving away from the dock. Naruto's tackle had ended with him on his knees. He turned shooting a piercing glare at Sasuke, who looked afraid for a second. It was almost as if he saw his eyes turn red almost like. Sasuke shook the thought from his mind and settled into the practiced Uchiha fighting stance. It wasn't terribly good now, since he didn't have the Sharingan. It utilized predicting the movements of your opponent, then counter-attacking. He didn't have the Sharingan, but in melee combat Naruto was predictable. Naruto charged forward with a volley of punches, no form almost as if he was purely a street fighter. Sasuke swiftly dodged all of the formless punches that were being shot his way. For Sasuke this had grown to be routine, Naruto would challenge him to a fight, he would beat him, and then he would carry on with his day. However, something in Naruto's eyes this time made him nervous. He knew he shouldn't be, it was just Naruto. However, the quick glances that he caught of Naruto's eyes, the utter determination in them, the coldness he hadn't seen since his brother. Sasuke flinched as he took a blow to the gut, which caused him to stumble a few feet back. That was pathetic of him, to allow Naruto to get a connecting blow such as that. What made it worse is he was continually comparing Naruto to his brother. Naruto and his brother. Yeah right, well he hated his brother, he was an amazing ninja. Naruto, he was bottom of the class, he barely passed the academy exam. Sasuke decided it was time to finish the fight, he threw a punch forward that Naruto is known to never dodge. However, to his surprise Naruto tilted his head and let the punch go by him. Naruto got in Sasuke's face again with a look that made the Uchiha want to flinch. Sasuke pictured Naruto mouthing words with the voice of his brother, getting scared like the Sasuke. It is not becoming of a ninja. Perhaps I chose the wrong person to be tasked for revenge. Sasuke grit his teeth at that thought that made him pause, however a pause was all that was needed for Naruto to get the upper hand. He was a surprising ninja after all. Naruto came at Sasuke from the front, while two clones ran up from Sasuke's sides, flanking him. Sasuke noticing this tried to punch the closest one, but it proved to be useless. Sasuke hit one dispersing it into a cloud of smoke only for Naruto to grab him by the throat and lift him into the air. With the assistance of his clone Sasuke was rendered immobile. Naruto's gaze caught Sasuke's eye and the Uchiha grit his teeth. Naruto then opened his mouth, making Sasuke want to punch him in the throat. Give up Sasuke, you lost. The voice, the calmness was so much like his brother's. He acted as if he was no challenge at all to Naruto. He wanted to rip his hair out at the thought, he had to be going crazy. He just got beat by the academy dead last, and the said dead last was reminding him of his genius shinobi traitor of a brother. Naruto continued to hold Sasuke up a foot off the ground. It highlighted his superior physical strength. Naruto calmly repeated, give up Sasuke. The fight is over. This voice sounded much more like Naruto and snapped Sasuke back to reality. Sasuke grit his teeth slowly, the cold truth was Naruto defeated him. Sasuke slowly nodded to his defeat, not wanting to pass out through lack of oxygen. Naruto got a huge grin on his face and looked over to Ino, who this entire time was openly gaping like a fish. Naruto calmly said, Ino wait here. Naruto offered a hand to Sasuke to help him stand up. The Uchiha had promptly fell to the floor on his knees at the sudden ability to intake oxygen. He was panting heavily and stared at Naruto's hand. Sasuke hesitantly took the offered hand and was quickly pulled to his feet by Naruto. Naruto turned to Ino and said, Ino wait at the top of the hill actually. Ino was shell-shocked and was about to burst out complaining of course until the words of their bet repeated in her head silently. Why yes, that is a bet, if you lose you have to be my slave for a week and if you win, I will be yours for a week. She grudgingly stalked up the hill, wanting to scream and curse her foolish bet. Naruto was about to follow and Sasuke called out to Naruto facing the lake. How did you beat me? He asked, a frown on his face at the thought of Naruto's eyes. Naruto paused mid-step and turned to Sasuke before turning back to Ino and shrugged, I guess because I had something to fight for. Sasuke grit his teeth at that thought and whispered silently to himself, he's wrong, connections make you weak. He thought to himself with a frown on his face. Right. Naruto once he got to the top of the hill grinned at Ino. She was currently leaning against a wooden fence, red in the face with her arms crossed. Naruto got an ear-splitting grin. What's wrong, Ino-chan? He added the suffix to her name to get a laugh out of her reaction. Ino sighed. Naruto, can we call off the bet please? I really don't want to do this. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. Oh really? You don't want to do this as in you would have called it off even if you won the bet? Or you don't want to do this because you lost? Naruto asked, a hint of annoyance in his voice. Ino didn't say anything, giving him all he needed to know. She would very well make him carry through with the bet if he lost. You made the bet, don't assume you can back out of it now. As a shinobi of Konoha, you are required and honor-bound to follow through on any agreement made with a fellow Konoha shinobi. He nearly recited the law from Book of Shinobi Laws word to word for Ino. This of course made Ino slide down the fence and sit down on the ground. She was a slave of Naruto's for a week and there wasn't a thing she could do about it. Naruto of course saw this and decided to tease her. Maybe I should just have you walk around my house naked, cleaning thing all day. I could film it and sell it for a lot of money. Ino's eyes widened until she heard Naruto burst out laughing. The laughing stopped and he stood right in front of her, or use you for sexual favors. That prompted him getting hit and Ino being red in the face due to a mix of embarrassment and anger. I won't do that for you, you sick fucking pervert. Naruto rubbed his chest and laughed as she said that. What could you do about it if I wanted that? Ino flinched at that. She could do nothing unless she wanted to break shinobi code. Naruto stretched and rolled his arms as knelt down to Ino once again and got in her face with a grin of his face. He cupped her chin between his left hand's fingers. Ino was doing anything but looking Naruto in the eye. Naruto smiled lightly. Ino, don't worry about all that. I won't do that to you. He said with a small smile on his face. I really only agreed to this because you would give me some company for the next couple weeks. Here, come on. He outstretched his hand to Ino, helping her up, which she reluctantly accepted. Naruto was about to walk away before he said, Ino, you owe me a kiss on the cheek. Ino scowled. Why? Naruto looked rather amused at that. It was fun being in charge. He could understand why Iruka-sensei liked teaching. Well, 1, because I can. 2, because you hit me earlier. Ino grit her teeth and practically stomped over to where Naruto was standing and kissed him on the cheek. Naruto didn't expect himself to turn so red, which in turn caused Ino to get an amused smile. She hadn't kissed a boy. Hell, Naruto was actually the first boy she had kissed. It was nice knowing her kiss had an effect like that, even if the boy who got kissed wasn't her crush. Naruto tried to straighten himself and quickly said, alright. He coughed a bit. Let's go to the training ground. You can meet me there every day at 12, alright. Ino tilted her head. Naruto, it is almost 6 p.m. I have to go home for dinner soon. Naruto turned to her with a grin. Well, I plan to get full use of my slave since I just got you. It's like a new toy. I just got to play with it. Ino rolled her eyes. So I'm just a toy to you? She asked loudly, rather annoyed with that concept. Naruto frowned. Well, do you consider yourself my friend? There was an air of desperation in his voice. Ino, well catching it, chose to ignore the question. They weren't friends, they were far from it. Naruto frowned when he gained no reply from Ino. I see. Desperation only attracts vultures. Chapter 2. The irony of Kakashi's teamwork. Naruto grit his teeth as he struggled against the ropes of the stump. This was officially the worst team ever. His sensei was 3 hours tardy, he hadn't eaten more than a bite of food all day. His stupid team sensei preached about the value of teamwork the entire genin test and then they all left him tied to a fucking stump. The sun was shining brightly down on him, he could see his skin was getting red. He normally would heal the sunburn before it could take on any effects normal people got. However, if he stayed out in the sun all day, he doubted even he could escape the effects. Kids had come by earlier. He recognized most of them. It was hard to forget faces that would laugh at him or look at him in fear. At least he knew why. It really put a damper on his day, however, when instead of coming by to untie him, they threw rocks at him and pissed on his pants. It was the worst feeling in the world to feel so disliked to get such treatment. Naruto hung his head. Ino hadn't shown up yet either. He had been tied to the stump for at least an hour and a half now. It was likely around 1:30 by now, judging by the sun in the sky. Part of him wanted to give up trying and just hope that someone would come get him soon. His sensei wouldn't seriously leave him tied to the stump, would he? What if he wouldn't be able to get out? He smelled like piss. The cut on his forehead from a rock had healed. However, the large amount of blood going down the left side of his face had dried. It likely stained that part of his face red. He was barely able to control the rage he was feeling. The more he thought about his current situation, the angrier he got. Sasuke could have untied him, Sakura could have untied him, Kakashi could have untied him. Better yet, why was it him being tied to the stump? He proved he was better than Sasuke yesterday, and Sakura didn't do a thing the entire day, especially during the test. Hell, she had assaulted him during the test when he said Sasuke wouldn't be able to get a bell alone. That was pathetic. She then proceeded to act as if the world was ending when she had to feed him. There was teamwork within the team, it seemed. However, it was Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke against him. He was on his own, and if that was the case he would prepare himself as such. Sasuke the entire day refused to look him in the eye. Sakura was constantly paying attention to Sasuke, no matter how much he tried to get their attention. Kakashi didn't bother to give him lunch when through creative use of his shadow clones, he was at least able to brush one of the bells tied to his waist. Naruto grit his teeth, "Ino, where the fuck are you?" He yelled out loud, ready to snap. Just then a voice cut the air, "Geez Naruto, what the hell happened to you?" said a distinctly female voice. Naruto peered out and squinted his eyes in the sunlight, just enough to spot Ino walking his way. "Oh save it Ino, just fucking untie me. Better yet, where the hell were you?" he yelled, clearly angry. He had to hold back tears, he hadn't been abused like this since he was a little kid. He felt like shit. Ino glared, "Well, for your information and too," she stretched out his name as she drawled, "I actually have a life, my team decided to do some bonding, and we went to have barbecue after our first practice." Naruto wanted to snap, "I don't fucking care Ino. Does it honestly look like I care?" Anger written all over his face, "Just fucking untie me, this is ridiculous." Ino wished she could directly disobey Naruto, of course that bet she had made with him made it, so she couldn't do it. Unless she didn't care about the idea of being someone with no honor. However, Sasuke-kun certainly wouldn't appreciate someone with no honor. Ino got closer to Naruto and asked, "So why can't you get yourself? What the hell Naruto, did you piss all over yourself?" Ino began laughing at Naruto as he growled, "I can't believe you actually wet your pants Naruto. That's pathetic." Naruto snapped, "Shut the fuck up Ino, or I will force you to eat dog shit and work in a brothel for the remainder of the week." The second the ropes got even an inch looser than they were, Naruto snapped them and began pulling off his jacket and shirt as he stomped over to the lake in the training ground. Ino had paused when Naruto yelled at her moments ago. She chose to silently follow him after that. She was taking Naruto's normal weak, sensitive personality for granted. She could very well be used as a whore for the week just so he could make extra money. However, he wasn't doing that, and he was really just treating her the way she was treating him. She was making fun of his over his misfortune. He could very well force her to do things because of her own misfortune. She was in no room to laugh at Naruto. Ino snapped back to her thoughts, only to catch Naruto stripping and walking into the lake. "What the hell Naruto? This is a public training ground," she yelled, covering her eyes. Naruto chose to ignore her. "Ino, give my pants and underwear," he said calmly, but annoyance was there in his voice. Ino was about to openly say, "No, they are covered in your piss." She greetingly walked over and picked up his pants and underwear by the top of his pants, where there was no pee. It still didn't stop her from picking the articles of clothing out with her thumb and index finger and barely tread into the water before she tossed them to him. Naruto pushed the clothes under water and put a rock on top of them as he washed the blood off of his face. Ino sat near the lake, it was a bit odd for her watching a boy wash himself. She could understand why he wouldn't want to walk through the streets with his former appearance, but she couldn't help but feel this was natural to him. He wasn't shaking from the cold water, not so much as a flinch. Naruto sighed in the cold water and spun around to look at Ino. Well, it pained him to apologize, he was taking his anger out on her and she didn't deserve that. "Ino, I'm sorry," he said simply. Ino perked up at that, being polite as she followed suit. "Well, I'm sorry too Naruto, but explain to me, how were you not able to control your bladder?" she asked curiously. She didn't make it sound as much of an insult or laughing at him this time around. Naruto scowled at the thought. "It's not my piss," he said simply. Ino didn't know what to think. That thought tore her up, such a simple response to a genuine question. The response was one you didn't want to hear. The thought that people would go by and piss on some kid tied to a log when he couldn't defend themselves. Then not even bothering to untie them. That was pathetic. Naruto, like every other ninja, was a guard for their village. Why would you treat a person that protects you like trash? The thought didn't make sense to her. Naruto had turned his back to her by now, not interested in continuing the conversation any longer. Ino got the hint and quietly sat down on a boulder by the lake. "So why were you tied to the stump Naruto? Did you act out against your sensei again?" Naruto frowned at the thought, he mulled over how he should answer that, but quietly said, "No, we took our team test today. He kept on telling us how teamwork was the core of a good team. How shinobi that don't follow the rules are trash and shinobi who abandon their comrades are worse than trash." Naruto sighed and shook his head before continuing, "But then my entire team leaves me tied to a stump. I can't help but feel it was a mistake being put on this team. Sure, I didn't have great academic grades, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad ninja." He picked up the rock that was currently on his pants and tossed it near the center of the lake. Ino stared at Naruto, lost in thought. She always prided herself on her book smarts, she was the second best in the class amongst the females. Then she always dominated the other girls in her class in the physical spars. Naruto, however, was always put against Sasuke in the spars. You can't grow from constantly getting your ass kicked. Sure, it makes you not want to get your ass kicked and it may prompt you to train outside of the academy. However, something as delicate as taijutsu, you can't really train yourself. If you tried to teach yourself taijutsu, more often than not you would end up teaching yourself an improper form similar to a street fighter. While street fighters may dominate battle amongst civilians, even the greatest street fighters would be beaten by some of the weakest trained ninja. They had spent the majority of the day yesterday after Naruto's confrontation with Sasuke training. They trained well into the night and she got a lot of exercise. She went home and crashed on her bed without dinner that night. However, through all of the training she learned more about Naruto. He was extremely resourceful. She had several bumps and bruises on her body that wouldn't have healed if it wasn't for the fact that her mother was a medic ninja. Any bruises that she would have had were taken care of by her. She paused to look at Naruto only to frown. Naruto had no parents and she knows she had given him a good few solid punches the other day. He should have been bruised quite a bit, which was odd to her. It was strange, the more she thought about Naruto, the more questions she would get. On one hand you have a troublemaker of the academy that got the worst possible grades. Then on the other hand, you have a boy that can beat the rookie of the year without much trouble at all. Honestly. No one else in the academy can make solid clones, how can the dead last? Ino's face contorted in concentration. His taijutsu form was horrible, and yet with the use of seemingly endless clones, he is able to make his absolutely crap form into something absolutely brilliant. Then even when not using jutsu to spar, the dead last becomes a genius. She would often punch him down or knock him backwards with a good kick and suddenly he would have a rock or large stick off the ground and smashing against her arm. She knew he could just as easily smash it on her head and end the battles right there, but he chose not to. Naruto fought dirty when he wasn't under the crucial eye of teachers. He would use anything and everything in a battle to get by, whether it be picking up a rock, throwing dirt in someone's eyes, or a low blow. The Naruto she had to spar against actually frightened her. He was ruthless against competition, winning at whatever costs. Even then, where he would win the majority of the spars, he wouldn't even try to hit her in the head or any other points that would have her on the ground instantly. If she got hit in the throat, she could be on the ground gasping for air. Naruto seemingly refused to do that and said he wouldn't use those tactics on friends, only on his enemies. Once again another thought popped into her mind due to thinking about Naruto. Friends. She wouldn't really call the two of them friends. She would make fun of him with the help of the other girls in the academy. They just happened to be in a situation where she had to stick around him unless of course ordered not to. Ino was brought out of her thoughts by the sight of Naruto standing up out of the water. A blush rushed onto her cheeks, she knew she should have turned around quickly, but she didn't want to. This was the first guy she had seen so bare. The thought made her red in the face. Naruto looks pretty cute with his hair wet like that and his muscles make him look so Ino promptly shook her head free of her thoughts. This was Naruto they were talking about. She quickly took to repeating a mantra of "you like Sasuke" in her head. It proved to be no use, every time she tried to picture Sasuke, Naruto would come back into her mind. Naruto turned around and grabbed his pants out from under the water. The view alone made Ino give out an undignified eep much like Hinata when Naruto would randomly say hi to her. She slapped a hand over her mouth but didn't stop watching until she saw Naruto's face twitch slightly. His face went from one of impassiveness to a small grin, it was obvious he had heard her. As he pulled on his pants and turned to her and gave her a smile. Son of a fucking flirt. Since when does Naruto flirt with anyone? Why does it have to be now? Ino was doing a fair impression of a tomato. He is just fucking throwing himself out there. She thought to herself, finally turning away after a large internal struggle not to. She quickly felt wet hands on her shoulders. The cold water trickled down her skin, feeling amazing on a hot day like this. The wet hands began to massage her shoulders and Naruto's voice broke through the air, "So like the show, Ino?" He asked rather amused. The self-proclaimed show wasn't the original intention, however when Ino took to watching him, he couldn't pass up the opportunity. Ino turned red as Naruto's hands began to roam around her neck and shoulders and eventually began to go down her arms. Ino got shivers from the touch on her body. Naruto was starting to have an internal battle with himself, being a growing teen, his raging hormones were not helping the situation. He had always wondered what it would feel like to kiss a girl, to do other things to a girl. He wanted to blush at that thought of how he created his personalized henge. It was often spying in on brothels and women's locker rooms. He learned a lot but had no way to practice what he learned. Then here he was with someone that would have to practice with him, but can I do it? He asked himself silently. He didn't want to force Ino to do things like that just because he could. That won't stop me from going as far as I can, he added as an afterthought. Naruto proceeded to massage down her sides and knelt down behind Ino. Ino in the meantime was in heaven. Wow, if I knew Naruto could give a massage like this, we would have been friends a lot sooner. She said to herself as she arched upward when Naruto began to massage her spine near the lower back. Naruto proceeded to rub his hands gently up and down her bandaged legs as he put soft kisses on her neck. Ino gasped at the tickling sensation and the surprise from the kisses on her neck. Ino felt like jello at the feeling of the roaming hands, each time then went up her legs they would go higher and higher teasing her. Ino knew it was wrong, she knew many things were wrong. Like watching Naruto bathe today was wrong, but she couldn't help it. She pushed the thoughts out of her mind and tried to focus on the tickling pleasure she was feeling. Curiosity killed the cat Ino, her conscience called out at her. She almost forced herself to stop at that thought until she felt her nipple get rubbed from the inside of her clothes. She promptly gasped at the touch and told her inner thoughts. Stupidity killed the cat, curiosity was framed. She quickly grabbed Naruto's hand that was still on her leg and pulled it up between her legs and gasped at the feeling. She leaned back into Naruto's chest, even though it isn't an order. If anyone asked her about it, she would say it was. She twisted her neck to Naruto and practically forced a kiss on him. She would be damned if any of this happened before her first kiss. A few moments later, she yelped. She would just let whatever happens happen. This was too good to stop right now. She quickly did the birth control jutsu taught to all kunoichi while in the academy and let Naruto carry on. Chapter 3. Look into my eyes, what do you see? The two blondes laid down looking up at the sky from the boulder they were on. Many thoughts flew through both of their heads as they thought about the situation. I can't believe we just did that, I mean we are 12. She gave out a frustrated cry at the thought. Naruto couldn't help but feel the same way, sure he loved how it felt, but they were both very young. It was fairly awkward as well, Naruto knew a lot about sex from what he had seen. However, he wasn't prepared for the intense feeling. Sure, they had done it several times, which Ino said wasn't supposed to be possible from what she had learned in her kunoichi class. Well, most shinobi die at our age, Ino, he tried to reason and convince himself. Ino sighed, her head was resting on Naruto's chest. It still wasn't right, I wanted to save that for the man I loved, Naruto. She felt like she was going to tear up, I wanted to save that for Sasuke-kun. Naruto flinched at that. Did he like Sasuke? Not really. Did he think Sasuke liked Ino? No, not really. Did he feel bad about taking something from her that she wanted to possibly save for someone else? Kind of. What is so good about Sasuke, Ino? What act of kindness has he really ever done for you? Naruto questioned her. Ino pursed her lips as if she was lost in thought before quickly replying, you wouldn't understand, Naruto, Sasuke is just a man of F. He's a boy, Ino. Naruto cut her off. Ino snapped her head to Naruto before growling, oh yeah, then what does that make you, Naruto? You act like you are better than him. Naruto stayed silent, taking her elbow shot to his ribs with a light wince of pain. A man, he said simply. Ino rolled her eyes and removed his arm that was wrapped around her, having sex doesn't make you a man, Naruto. Naruto this time chose to roll his eyes, I never said that is what makes a boy a man. I call myself a man because all my life I have had to support myself. The Hokage pays for my apartment, however all other money I had to get on my own through whatever means. Sasuke is a boy, he spends all of his time moping around feeling sorry for himself, getting people to feel sorry for him, and for what? Ino got wide eyes, what do you mean for what? He lost his entire family, Naruto. Naruto shook his head, see that is pathetic. I'm an orphan, I lost my family, or I never even had a family, Ino. I would much rather have had love and lost it, at least then I would know what it is. Everyone loves Sasuke, they all want to adopt him, be his girlfriend, whatever. I'm an orphan, Ino, among other things. People don't care that if I'm on the streets, no one wanted to adopt me, no one cares. I don't go around moping about has people who want to try and be his friends, and he pushes them all away. I have no friends and welcome in anyone even if they happen to be traitors. Ino raised an eyebrow, what do you mean traitors? Naruto sighed. Mizuki. Ino glared, what the hell do you mean Mizuki-sensei is a traitor, Naruto? That's not nice to say. Naruto shook his head, no, Mizuki is a traitor, he tried to steal the forbidden scroll a couple days ago, Ino. Well, actually I stole it because he asked me to, he then tried to kill me for it. However, I mastered the shadow clone jutsu and was able to surprise him and beat him. Ino's face went through various emotions ranging from surprise to frustration. He beat our chunin instructor, she thought quietly to herself. It was amazing how often Naruto could surprise her. Naruto looked over to Ino, he pushed her blonde hair out of her face, it was no longer in a bang, her ponytail had fallen out during their earlier fun. Ino, Naruto started as he looked over her, then the lake, what does this exactly make us? Ino pursed her lips, they weren't even friends when this happened. She wanted to be with Sasuke-kun, but since this already happened, and she enjoyed it. She knew she was going to want it again, and she knew Sasuke wouldn't suddenly turn a leaf and make love to her. In closed her eyes and sighed, I don't know, can you give me a day or so to think about it? It was odd to her, she was beginning to like Naruto. She didn't know exactly how she was beginning to like him or in what way she liked him. Maybe it was just because what they had done. All she knew is that it was starting to happen. The look on Naruto's face made her heart sink. He was obviously hoping for an on-the-spot answer, and frankly that just wasn't an answer she was able to give just yet. Naruto grimly nodded at her answer. He sat up on the rock, Ino's head sliding into his lap. come on, I'll walk you home. He nearly whispered to her with a frown. Ino stayed there for a couple seconds, searching his eyes before sitting up and fixing her clothes. She fixed her top and put her hair back into a ponytail, albeit a messier one than normal. Naruto leaned over the side of the rock and proceeded to put on his now damp articles of clothing. He didn't know how he felt about her needing time. What if she actually decided against it? Ino stood up and helped Naruto up. They were both choosing to stay silent and not speak to each other. The day was coming to a close, and Naruto respected that she wanted time, so that's what he planned to give her. He gave her a one-armed hug as he walked with his shirt over his opposite shoulder. She leaned into it but refused to wrap her arms around him. Naruto sighed and pat her back gently. Come on. Naruto and Ino stood at the doorstep of her family's house in silence, a silence that lasted a good couple minutes. Naruto chose to rub the back of his head and take a step back. Alright, I guess I will just be going now. Alright. I will see you in a few days, I guess, right Ino? Ino looked away and said, Naruto, I enjoyed today, but you need to give me some time to think, okay? Naruto tried to catch her eye but ultimately failed and shrugged. That was the plan, Ino. Anyways, I'll see you around, okay? He laughed a bit at the end to try and liven the mood as he began to walk away. Naruto paused as he felt a pair of arms wrap around him from behind and a light kiss on his cheek. He grew bright red at the idea, and the voice didn't help the cause at all. Night, Naruto-kun. The suffix was added as an afterthought, but it didn't stop him from grinning. He looked back only to catch Ino's door close. Naruto paused for a moment before he began to run down the street with a large smile on his face, jumping off roofs laughing to himself. Things weren't looking that bad in his life for once. Naruto was down and excited at the same time. The Hokage had just given his team a mission out of the village, their first C-rank mission. The bad thing for him was, Ino still hadn't come talk to him. She said she was going to talk to him in a day, but it had been 3 and he still had gotten no word from her. He didn't really care about the whole bed anymore, he really just missed her presence. If he was honest with himself, she had been far more of a team than his teammates had been so far. During training, more often than not, Kakashi would give Sakura a scroll on a genjutsu and him a book on the basics. Then he would do sparring with Sasuke and trying to help him learn his Phoenix Fire Jutsu. It was pathetic really, who decides to take up a genin team and proceeds to neglect 2 of the 3 members of the team. Sakura may do fine with books, it was how she often learned. Himself, however, well, he was more of a hands-on person. If you just threw a book his way, he oftentimes would get distracted too easily. Ino had given him friendship and more he didn't want to think about at the moment. She had been a better friend and teammate than either of his current teammates had, would constantly bash him on the head for the littlest things. He had known the Hokage all his life, the entire village should know that. When he was a little kid, everyone's parents would come and get them after school. The Hokage would personally come and get him, so why the hell would she hit him over calling him an old man? It was rather just observing and stating the obvious. Then Sasuke, he wouldn't talk to either him or Sakura. The only time he would say anything is when he had a question about a jutsu or to Naruto or tell Sakura off. He often walked around with a subconscious message about himself that he wanted everyone to respect him. He assumed everyone would respect him because of his clan. It pissed Naruto off royally. He often found himself trying to bust Sasuke's balls just to get the message across to him that not everyone will respect him because of his dead family. Hell, the Hokage had said that he used to be from a prestigious clan. You didn't see him walk around like he owned the place. That's because you don't own anything, a seductive whisper called out to him. Naruto shook his head free of the voice before he continued on his rant. Their sensei, it was virtually impossible to respect the man. He tied him to a stump and left him there for the day. He walked around reading porn, he didn't let you see his face. How can you trust someone when you don't feel like they trust you enough to even show their face to you? So what if your face is scarred? So what if it reminds you of a painful memory? I have 3 scars on each cheek. He thought sourly to himself. He was currently on the way home, it was late morning. He had an hour to go pack his bag and essentials. The annoying part about it was that his team was likely going to do an inventory check before they leave. They are going to get full view of his beat-up equipment and essentials. He had lived off the land for a year in his early childhood. He learned how to cook stray animals, whether they be rabbits to the occasional domesticated dog or cat. Have to do what you can't alive, he thought harmlessly. Most of his pack would consist of things he had made himself. Whether it be his personal blanket, a seashell he used to boil water, and a flint stone. If he was honest with himself, he could likely just pocket the flint and make way on the trip without a pack. He never got cold at night, his body seemingly ran at a constant 10 degrees hotter than the conditions called for, as if it was constantly trying to heat up the air around him. He didn't feel it, but it was still something to note and he was sure Ino felt it. He more often than not found him sleeping without covers in his sleep because it would become too hot for him. He didn't want to be cocky, but he had the true potential to be the perfect hunter. Able to hunt in any conditions was a huge advantage over everyone else in the world. He imagined that if he ever went to the countries he had read about in class, such as Snow Country, his advantage would shine through. He was unable to get burned, as he noticed many times when he was a child trying to use the stove correctly. He even once slipped into the fire while he was cooking in the forest one night. While his clothes were nearly beyond repair, his body remained as good as new. Naruto pursed his lips as he adjusted that statement. No, good as new would insinuate my body would be as good as the normal human, but I'm not normal, am I? He thought to himself with a frown. There is nothing wrong with being different, Naruto called a voice irresistibly. Naruto paused his train of thought and stood still. The voice grated on him. He had been hearing whispers in his head ever since he had become a genin. Sure, he could block them out and try to ignore them, however they encouraged him. He knew it sounded crazy. He personally felt that it should be common knowledge that you shouldn't listen to a voice inside your head that is not your own. Who knows what type of techniques ninja have developed over time. Not to mention his personal situation could easily be voices of a figure he would never want to meet. However, he couldn't help it. He heard these whispers in his head, they counseled him, and they understood him. Hell, they talked to him. He knew it was bad and that he would likely be taken off active ninja duty if he ever said he was listening to voices in his head and trying to talk to them. It was just the voice talk to him. That was more than he could say about other people he had seen in his life. He could count the people that take time out of their day to talk to him on his hands, and he was sure some of them didn't even like him that much. The whispers, while seductive, understood him, reassured him, it was something he didn't want to give up. Naruto hit himself on the head a few times to clear it. This was not the train of thought he needed to be on before his first big mission. He grabbed the flint he had and put it in his pocket before rushing out the door with only a few ninja supplies. The rest of the stuff he could find or make. Naruto sighed at the front gates of Konoha. He had been waiting on his team for a good hour. He was even able to go through a short workout routine that helped build his already impressive physical strength for someone his age. He opted eventually to just sit down at the gate with his head down and allowed himself to drift asleep. Of course, this wasn't the best of plans because he jumped up startled when Ino had plopped down next to him. There was an awkward silence between the two of them. To be honest, it was rather unnerving. They sat still right next to each other in silence for a good 5 minutes before Naruto let out a slow, so he paused to look at her to see her reaction. Have you come to say bye to me for my mission? Or are you ready to talk? What's going on? He questioned repeatedly. Ino looked at her hands in her lap before lifting her head and shrugging her shoulders. Sure, I mean, I wanted to say goodbye to you as well, but I also wanted to say goodbye to Sasuke-kun and Sakura. Naruto tilted his head to the side at the mention of Sakura. Don't you two always fight? The last time I remember you not fighting was when you two were about 7, he finished slowly, expressing his obvious confusion. Ino caught on and laughed a little. It did seem rather odd if you put it like that. True, me and Sakura do fight a lot, however I still like her. I mean, she is my best friend, how can I get mad at her over a boy? It is not so much fighting anymore, it is just all for this rivalry. Rivalry? Naruto raised an eyebrow. What are you rivals about? It was a simple reaction, and much to Ino's displeasure it prompted her to purse her lips and try to think of an explanation. She found none. Quickly opting to deflect, Naruto, do you know when Sakura and Sasuke are going to get here? Naruto stared at her for a moment and couldn't help but frown. She didn't have to act like that with him. They are somewhere I don't know, they are supposed to be here already. However, I have been here for an hour, I'm actually getting rather hungry. They better hurry. You didn't eat breakfast? Ino asked curiously. Naruto shook his head slowly with his head down, letting out a sigh. No, I didn't have anything in the kitchen and I thought I was running late anyways. Ino was about to dismiss him saying he had nothing in the kitchen as an expression until she realized this was Naruto. Naruto seemed to get the short end of the stick in life, at least she had noticed since she started to pay attention to him. What do you mean you don't have anything in your kitchen? Where do you eat? Naruto stared at her for a moment as if searching her eyes for something before shrugging. He motioned his arm out to the forests of Konoha beyond the large gate. I normally cook my food because I normally don't have any or much money. If I do have money, it is normally used to buy ramen or cheap ninja tools. Ino's eyes widened momentarily. Why don't you have any money? Don't your parents? She cut herself off prematurely. He had no money because he had no means to make it till now. Naruto bit his lip and choosing to mimic Ino. Hey, there is my team. He said quickly as he pointed down the street, where sure enough his team was walking alongside an old saw Sakura carrying along a takeout box and couldn't help but get angry. They left him out of this. They didn't tell them they were going to get food. He was starving here, they likely wouldn't make any stops for food now for a while on their trip. Why are you surprised? It's not like they have treated you badly before. Right, Naruto-kun, the intoxicating voice drifted through his head. Naruto heard the words echo and whisper for moments until he told himself, no, wrong. They have done this to me before. He grit his teeth at the thought. I was just trying to make you feel better, whispered the feminine voice in his head. This of course got a reaction from Naruto. Who had really ever tried to make him feel better about the things he did? Everyone seemed to reprimand him. They would punish him or make him feel bad, and then leave was the only one who had ever tried to make him feel better. The night he had given him his headband, and even then it was too little too late. Thanks, he uttered to himself. Unconsciously he said it out loud, promptly gaining Ino to ask in response. For what? I have been snapping my fingers in front of your face the past 30 seconds, it was like you weren't even there. She told him with a hint of frustration in her voice. However, while she was frustrated, she was also tempted. She was tempted to use her clan techniques to find out exactly what he was thinking about that was causing him to zone out like that. Naruto was about to say something or give an explanation. However, his stomach decided it was his turn to do the talking. It promptly growled, rather loudly. This of course gathered a blush from Naruto. Oddly enough, instead of Ino finding it funny, she was a bit worried. She reached to her side and gave Naruto a small paper bag that was sitting beside her. Naruto felt a bit annoyed with himself for the fact that he hadn't noticed the bag until now. However, when he opened it up, he was very happy to see a sandwich, along with some. Looked over to Ino. Well, he was happy that she had given it to him. He didn't really want to take it from her. You sure? He asked carefully as he held up the small paper bag. Ino caught Sakura and Sasuke out of the corner of her eye. They had now reached the gate. Ino gave a smile. Well, originally the lunch was for Sasuke-kun. However, it looks like you all went to eat, so she paused and rubbed the back of her head with a smile. You can have it, Naruto, since you didn't eat. She then stole a glance at Sasuke to see if her statement had gained any reaction from him. Of course, when it didn't, it was a bit disappointing. Naruto spotted Kakashi in the corner next to the client and he promptly got up and marched over to him. Ino saw this and wanted to stop him until Sakura had come up to her. Splitting the two convos up, Naruto walked up and promptly punched his sensei's chest hard. What the fuck? He yelled, gaining the attention of everyone around. Kakashi was rather surprised by this type of reaction from Naruto. I arrive here perfectly on time and you all take an hour to get here. I didn't even get to have breakfast and you all come walking an hour and 20 minutes late with food. Kakashi recovered from the surprisingly strong blow delivered from Naruto and said, you need to calm down, Naruto. Naruto's eyebrows rose quickly before lowering in anger. Calm down. What reason have you ever given me to respect you or at least be civil with you? This is fucking pathetic. Everyone's attention was now glued to the interaction. The continuous use of vulgar language on Naruto's part had everyone's attention. You arrived 3 hours late when we were supposed to meet you. You preached about teamwork and then left me tied to a stump. You tell everyone to be here on time and then you go with everyone except me for food. I wouldn't have gotten to eat for hours until Ino just gave me her lunch. Naruto grit his teeth and clenched his fists. He had the desire to hit the man once again and tear that stupid mask off his face. Naruto, you have to trust me as your sensei. Naruto exploded. Trust isn't given, it's earned. Aside from the fact that you give me no reason to trust you. You don't even trust us with anything about your personal life, your face. I am not going to place my trust in someone who can't trust me. Not to mention when I have no reason to even like the person. Naruto relaxed himself and calmed down, which Kakashi took it as the perfect time to talk. Naruto, you are my student, you will talk to me in a respectful manner regardless of the situations. I'm sorry that I didn't tell you about the team getting food this morning. Naruto scoffed, no you're not, the team consists of you, Sasuke and Sakura. Kakashi paused for a moment and tried to think of a time he had actively helped Naruto, since they were a team. He wanted to use that as an example, but it only proved to make himself feel like a fool. He hadn't really helped Naruto at all since they had became a team at the beginning of the week. He had actually done more wrong to him than good. He could understand why Naruto was acting the way he was now. I ran into Sakura and Sasuke the other day after training, I thought they would have passed the word on to you. Kakashi said, seemingly trying to convince himself that was the truth. Naruto sighed. He didn't know whether it was the truth of a lie, but it didn't matter to him. Do you wear that mask and headband over your face to make up for your absolute inability to lie effectively? All of the younger students were surprised. Not by Naruto saying those words to Kakashi, but more that Naruto picked those choices of words to express his statement. Naruto always appeared to be the student that used the most simple words to express himself or how he was feeling. It was as if he taught himself how to speak and read. Naruto sighed and chose to look Kakashi in the eye. Almost like a challenge, Naruto stared at him and calmly asked, look in my eyes, Kakashi, what do you see? To everyone listening in, it was an odd statement. Something that one normally didn't say. They knew it was a documented quote that was given by Uchiha Madara to Hashimara Senju during the founding of Konoha. However, no one really used it because they didn't understand exactly what it meant. It appeared to be a thing on a personal level because it thoroughly shook Hashimara during a meeting. Kakashi looked into Naruto's eyes, not to back down from the underlying challenge given from Naruto. However, once he did, he wished he hadn't. Various memories flashed by him playing out in Naruto's eyes. Obito, Minato, Kushina. He understood why Minato and Kushina may show up in his eyes, but Obito just baffled him and it hurt. To him it lasted minutes, but to everyone else it was only seconds. He flinched and took his eyes off of Naruto before calling out, "Team, we leave in 5. He turned away from Naruto and began reading his book, trying to get his thoughts collected and no more stray memories. Naruto didn't know exactly what happened, he just knew the statement was a challenge done between a shinobi and his superior, he just felt it was the right time to use such a statement. Naruto wanted to laugh when he said team and quickly called out to Kakashi, "So who is this team you speak of? Am I part of it, or do you mean Sakura and Sasuke?" He finished in a yell, hints of frustration still lingering in his voice. Kakashi dismissed it with a quick "you're part of the team to Naruto." Naruto scoffed, "I see, fine, I will settle with a sensei that is worse than trash. Those who abandon a mission are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. It is fine, I understand." Naruto turned around and began walking back to the wall. Kakashi had looked up when he had his late teammate's quote thrown back in his face once again. He only looked back in time to catch Naruto's retreating back. However, as his mind opted to dye his clothing black and orange along his hair, he understood why Obito flashed into his head. They are exactly the same, he thought as he pursed his lips under his mask before turning back to his book, not wanting to think about the subject any longer. "Wow, Ino pig, what was that about?" Sakura quickly whispered to Ino. Ino currently was depressed, she thought it would be hard-pressed for anyone who listened to that to not feel a bit bad for Naruto. "I don't know, Sakura," she lied. "I just came to say goodbye to your team." She finished with a small smile on her face. Sakura raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms, "Why would you want to say goodbye to me or Naruto? You are just here trying to get closer to Sasuke, aren't you? You even made that lunch for him." She finished with a frown. Ino rubbed her arms and laughed, "No really, I did want to say goodbye, Sakura. You are a good friend to me, I want you to be careful. Yes, I like Sasuke, so I'm going to say goodbye to him after you." She smiled at the end over her statement. Sakura's frown broke and she quickly pulled Ino into a hug. "I'll be okay, it is just an escort mission. What is the worst that could happen?" Sakura pulled away smiling at Ino. Ino gave a half smile back, her mind now on all the bad things that could happen to the team. She just hoped none of them came true. Ino promptly turned and ran over to Sasuke and forcefully gave him a hug. His calm expression turned to one of annoyance rather quickly. "I'll miss you, Sasuke-kun," she said with a hint of joy and laughter in her voice. Sasuke shrugged her off of him and said, "Go away, Ino." In frustration. He positioned himself against the wall to prevent another assault on his person. Ino was a bit disappointed at the short goodbyes between the two, although they had taken the 5 minutes Kakashi had set aside before they were going to leave. She quickly turned to where Naruto was, only to see his position had changed from where he was originally sitting. He was now facing away from the group, his back against the edge of the gate, blocking his vision of his team. She walked over to where he was sitting and asked, "Why did you make a scene like that?" She said with a frown. This action gathered the attention of the ninja around. It was actually on file that Ino and Naruto were the least likely people to ever get along. Yet here they were, trading lunches, talking with each other, sitting with each other. It didn't make any sense, especially to those that she was close to. Naruto rolled his eyes at her. "Why did you hump Sasuke's back like that?" He shot back at her. She in turn flinched, was that really what it appeared she was doing? Naruto's team started to walk out onto the road, formations around the client already being called. Naruto sighed and quickly said, "I have to go, alright." Ino grabbed his arm as he made his way to leave. "No, why are you acting like this? You were fine earlier and now you are being an ass to me. Just because you are mad at your sensei doesn't give you the right to be a complete asshole to me." Naruto frowned and as his team continued walking and got out of earshot he harshly whispered, "How am I supposed to feel? I mean what? Am I only going to kiss you in private? Am I not good enough to be your friend in public, Ino?" Once Sakura and Sasuke arrived, the popular people. He used finger quotes for emphasis, "You completely ignore me and act like when you are giving me something, it isn't to a friend, but to a lost cause. I should have made you kiss my feet in front of everyone for crap like that." He snarled out as he shrugged out of her grasp. Ino flinched, she had ignored him since Sasuke and Sakura came around. She couldn't help but feel two-faced. She quickly tried to redeem the situation by pulling him into a kiss like she had seen in the romantic movies she had used to watch with her mother when she was a child. However, it wasn't the same as it was the first time they kissed. It was like there was only activity on her part of the kiss. When she broke away, Naruto looked down with a frown. He said, "See, this is what I am talking about. You only act this way with me when we are in private." Ino quickly looked around, she hadn't even noticed they were alone. The only one around was someone up the street checking out the fruit stand, too busy to pay attention to a couple kissing at the gates of Konoha. Ino hastily tried to correct him, "Naruto, it isn't like that at all, I just..." Naruto shook his head and covered her mouth. "Ino, I have to go, I'll just talk to you after the mission or something, alright?" He then walked onto the road at a quick pace to catch up to his team, leaving Ino in distress. Something clicked for her at that moment. While she liked Sasuke, she grew to like Naruto just as much. Naruto walked down the road looking down and kicking rocks as whispers filled into his head. She likes you, you know. However, she likes the black-haired boy more. Don't worry though, Naruto-kun. I love you, no one could possibly love you more than me. Then where are you? He said to himself. I have been here all along, Naruto-kun, whispered the tempting voice. Pain spiked into his head and his vision started to blur. The world around him went from his normal color vision to seeing chakra rapidly until he saw for a moment a female standing before him. She knelt down to Naruto, who was currently laying on the ground. Before him was a woman with perfect skin. Her hair was to her mid-back and a fiery red color that blew and flickered around like a flame. Her face was that of a goddess, beautiful elegant features that women would kill to have. Her body had a perfect figure, nothing too big nor too small. Her body was toned, that helped show off her curved figure. She had blood-red eyes with black slits. She had sharp teeth that made their presence known when she gave a feral smile. She had 3 whisker marks on each of her cheeks, far more feral than Naruto's. Her smell was intoxicating, it was as if everything one liked in life was the smell she gave off. Her voice was that of an angel, which did not go too well with the appearance she gave off. Her melodic voice could likely get anyone to do anything for her, male or female. Every moment she made could have you entranced and wrapped around her finger if she wanted. All the while giving off this image, she wore standard shinobi-issued clothing, that of a jounin. She moved over to Naruto and ran a clawed finger on his cheek and gave him a smile. She opened her mouth and her seductive and enticing voice came forth once again. See, I have always been with you, Naruto-kun, it is time for you to go back now. She rolled him over and gave him a kiss on his lips that had him melt for a moment before widening and shooting up back into reality. Fading whispers filled his senses, for once causing him to smile to himself, no matter how dark the words were. He felt that in a cryptic sense they reiterated his life. O all ye who pass by, whose eyes and mind, the worldly things are sharp, but to me blind. To me, who took eyes that I might you find was ever grief like mine. Chapter 4. What it means to be a hero. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto. Naruto jumped in front of his team who were walking by the bridge builder, falling into formation. Naruto was late, and he knew it. He was surprised that his sensei hadn't chewed him out for arriving late or delaying their mission. Not to mention he had caused the bridge builder to drop his drink. Of course his teammate hadn't been as kind. She had went on about how it was in bad taste to do that to their clients, which Naruto promptly chose to ignore. Naruto sighed and stretched his hands at the front of the group, setting a rather quick pace, something the bridge builder wasn't too happy about. With the way Naruto was walking, one could likely jog slowly at the same pace as him. Naruto, however, was just stressed. The confrontation with fiery-haired woman was stuck in his head. Not to mention, what did the kiss mean? Was she really going to always be there for him? Was she the only one that understood him? Was he going crazy due to it being a voice in his head? These were thoughts flying through his head as he walked down the road. He paid careful mind to not step in the puddle on his way at the front of the group, wouldn't want his fate. The puddle. Naruto spun around quickly and threw a kunai into the puddle, only to watch the liquid turn red and out burst a single shinobi who had a chain seemingly tying him to the puddle. He knew something was up since it hadn't rained in weeks. He was actually surprised he was able to make that connection with all the thoughts going through his head at the moment. A shinobi continued to tug at his chain that kept him tied to the water. Naruto looked around, now fully alert, and his eyes wide couldn't help but scowl as he saw his sensei. He was standing there off to the side reading his book. Sasuke had taken up a defense stance by Sakura and the bridge builder. They both fell down in fright when the shinobi had jumped out of the water. Acting quickly, Naruto chose to do the first thing that came to mind for him. He created 2 clones and charged forward. The missed shinobi's eyes narrowed and he snarled behind his mask. It was just luck that the stupid brat would throw a kunai and it would hit his brother in the neck, paralyzing him, but keeping the genjutsu intact since he had yet to die. He lifted up a gauntleted arm like a shield, preparing to backhand the genin. There was only one of them. Honestly, how many fresh genin could actually make a solid clone? The last one he could recall from Mist before he had fled with Zabuza was Zabuza himself making a solid clone. It was in fact how the demon was able to slaughter all of his classmates. Through his super ire chakra supplies used to make clones and outnumber the students. This boy was no Zabuza. This was what he thought. Naruto charged forward, 1 clone in front, him on the left wing and another clone on the right. They mirrored their actions and rushed forward, kunais drawn. 1 clone leapt upwards, 1 clone tried to attack the shinobi from the right, and Naruto ducked under the flailing chain to go for a stab to the ribs. The missed shinobi backhanded the on-clone coming at him away, to his surprise to get his vision filled with smoke. He flailed a black-booted foot forward, in hopes to hit the one that he saw was going for his left side. The idea worked, however that put all of his balance on his right foot. The pain that shot throughout his body moments later was something he hoped would end shortly. His vision cleared and was now just blurry. The kid was stabbing him repeatedly on his right side, cutting into him stomach, ribs, a large slice across the chest. His eyes closed when one final stab got him directly into the heart. It wasn't a painless death, but it was a relatively quick one. Naruto stumbled backwards once the man slumped forward, he didn't know what to feel. The only problem he felt was right now, he felt no remorse for what he did. He killed the man, and his biggest concern was when he was going to get to the wave village to sleep in a proper bed. His brain shouldn't be working like that, at least he hoped it wasn't working like that. He would feel like a rather sick bastard if it did work like that. He walked up to the fallen shinobi with pursed lips and pulled it out of the man. He knew one thing was for certain, he was not going just leave a kunai behind. He was low on money as it was, there was no need to contribute to that. He wiped off the blood on the fallen man's clothes as he closed his eyes for a moment. Naruto's team watched the scene with varying emotions. Sasuke grit his teeth but kept his expression rather monotone. He was going to protect the builder and Sakura, then save the day. He never imagined that Naruto would be able to kill someone so openly like that. However, the image of Naruto's face mirroring the expression Itachi had the night of the genocide came into his mind and he held back a flinch. Naruto, while seemingly stupid in tactics, horrible in book smarts, the dead last of the academy had exceeded him in the practical part of being a shinobi. The thought annoyed him to no end. Sakura's mind was far more one track. She always used to look at Naruto as some horrible, annoying boy that would always ask her to get ramen with him. However, as of recent that boy has been gone, and to add to that fact, the blonde wasn't a boy. He had just killed someone. She never thought Naruto took his shinobi training seriously and thought it was just fun and games. Yet here was Naruto, the dead last of the academy, likely the first of their graduating class to make their first kill. Kakashi was the one on the team far more open about how he felt. "Naruto, why did you kill him?" he said with an exasperated sigh of frustration. Naruto spun on his heels to look at his supposed teacher and couldn't help but get annoyed by just looking at him. "Why did I kill him? What do you mean why did I kill him? How often have you let someone who jumped out of a puddle right in front of you live? Not to mention he was a missing nin, for all we know he could have been trying to kill us." "Naruto. That is my point, we don't know what he was doing, for all we know he wasn't trying to kill us, but he was trying to kill the bridge builder." Kakashi's eyes narrowed as he stared at the sweating old man. "Why were there shinobi after you, Tazuna-san?" Naruto clenched his teeth before making an outburst. "Like you said, we don't know if they were even after him, Kakashi-sensei. So let's just carry on." Tazuna mentally thanked the boy. "I agree, I have no idea why shinobi are here. Perhaps they were after one of you." Naruto snickered and added to that, "That could be true, the bingo book does have you listed in there, Kakashi." Naruto grinned at Kakashi's obvious displeasure with how Naruto had decided to take things. Kakashi stared Naruto along with Tazuna before saying, "Alright Sasuke, you lead, don't go as fast as Naruto was going. I need to talk to him at the back of the formation." The Uchiha let out a sigh. If he was in the front and Kakashi and Naruto were in the back, it meant Sakura was also in the front. Sasuke nodded and to the right side of the road and opted to walk on a slanted part of the dirt road, which was as far as he could get from Sakura. Kakashi and Naruto lagged behind at the back of the group and Kakashi, while looking at his book, asked Naruto, "Why are you directly opposing whatever I tell you? Why do you wear a headband over your eyes? Fashion statement." Naruto quipped back at the scarecrow before holding up a finger and running back to the fallen shinobi's body. He was back in step with Kakashi moments later, in his hand was the missed shinobi's headband. Kakashi watched as Naruto tucked his blue headband over his eye and proceeded to wrap the other headband over the lower half of his face. "How do I look?" he asked with a large smile, which was covered by a missed shinobi headband. Kakashi ignored the question and proceeded to say, "It is wrong to loot a shinobi's missing nin headband." Naruto quickly jabbed back, "It is also wrong to tie your students to a stump for a day." Kakashi rolled his eyes at the fact they were back at this subject. "You should have known how to get yourself out." Naruto laughed, "Oh really, because the next day you told me I needed to learn the basics." Kakashi pursed his lips under his mask and lied through his teeth, "I didn't know you hadn't learned the rope escape technique." Naruto shrugged, "It's okay, I didn't know the senseis that would take our teams would be femme fatales, chain smokers, and perverts." Kakashi opted to ignore the barb, no reason to punish him when he was trying to talk to the boy. "Why is it that you are deflecting every question I give you? Why did you kill that missing ninja?" Naruto felt the urge to continue his pace with deflecting and say something like, "Slow down with the questions, you're going too fast." But he knew that it wouldn't score him any points in this conversation. "Are you seriously trying to ask me why I killed a shinobi that was trying to kill me?" Kakashi paused, "That was the wrong way to ask the question. No, it's just that I stood back watching the battle to see who the shinobi was going to attack and you killed him before he could try and attack the bridge builder." Naruto scowled, "Oh, you just stood back. What if he wasn't after the bridge builder? What if he was just killing whomever because he was a homicidal maniac?" You just stood back when I was in danger. Hell, he even had poison on his claws. Kakashi ignored the majority of the questions and statements. How did you know he had poison on his claws? Naruto found it much easier to fake his emotions with all the cloth over his face. It was horrible when you tied me to the stump. The villagers came and started slicing me with knives laced with ricin. Kakashi's eyes widened for a moment then narrowed. Did I really leave a kid tied to a stump only to be stabbed repeatedly with a poison twice as potent as cobra venom? Kakashi paled at the implications. He could understand why the boy was so intolerant. That was a lie. No, you just tied me to a stump and got breakfast with 2 of your students while you left me out. That is why I don't like you, don't respect you, and don't trust you. Did I mention you just stood by while I fought a trained killer? Yeah, I don't trust you. Don't ask me stupid questions like why did I kill someone who was likely going to kill me. Kakashi stared at Naruto as the boy ran ahead to the front of the group, ahead of Sasuke and Sakura, forming a diamond formation around the builder. Kakashi sighed. He talked like that, always deflecting and ignoring a person's questions. Was he really that annoying to talk to? Back with the fallen Miss Shinobi, a masked ninja jumped down to the road floor. Dispelling the Jinjutsu-layered puddle, she quickly picked up a paralyzed shinobi and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto continued walking along the road, sifting through various thoughts that had happened throughout the day so far. He thought back to Ino. He may have been a bit hard on her, but he found it just. She had fairly just. She did seemingly only want to be around him when people weren't around. Other than that, she was hanging on Sasuke in public. A thought crossed his mind as he thought about Ino, and he couldn't help but smirk. She makes a horrible slave. Naruto heard a rustling in the bushes and let his instincts take over once again, throwing a kunai directly at it. He just hoped he hadn't hit a child or something in the forest. Naruto. What are you doing? Yelled Sakura, startled by the kunai that flew by right in front of her. Naruto ignored her and jumped into the brush, to come out moments later holding a snow-white bunny by the ears. Naruto was looking at the bunny rather funny, as if something was off, when he heard Kakashi yell, "Get down!" before he pulled the builder down. Sasuke had dragged Sakura down with him. Naruto on the other hand jumped up to the old branch in the tree, just in time to see the glint of metal flying through the air over his team. A large blade stuck into the tall tree in front of them, and in a swirl of leaves, a man stood on blade looking down at the group of shinobi below. Naruto could see his sensei tense his muscles and looked back to the shinobi in the tree to take in his appearance. However, the key detail he found was the missing ninja headband. Naruto felt a bit bad now. This shinobi held an aura of confidence about him and caused Kakashi to tense up. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to kill Th. Naruto shook his head, clear of any thoughts revolving around his previous actions. Of course it was a good idea. The man was going to kill him if he didn't kill him first. Kill or be killed, that is the way of life of a shinobi. I can't believe that it was the blonde boy that killed the demon brothers. I thought for sure that it would have been the great copy ninja Kakashi. Once I had heard you were on the squad, I had to rethink my battle strategy. Kakashi's eyes narrowed at the mention of his bingo book name, but remained silent, searching for a way to keep his team safe and survive at the same time. Honestly, I thought of all of your students to kill the demon brothers, it at least would have been the Uchiha. Both Sasuke and Naruto flinched at that statement. Naruto was frustrated that this missed shinobi was underestimating him, regardless of his so-called sensei calling it an advantage or not. He wanted to be taken seriously. Sasuke, however, was frustrated at the truth in the statement. His goal was to avenge his clan, and yet here he was being shown up by the failure in the academy. That passed on sheer luck. Learns a kenjutsu overnight and is able to beat him the next day. It is ridiculous. He knew several techniques unique to his clan, even techniques taught to him by his brother. He should be vastly superior to Naruto in every way. The thought made him clench his fists until his knuckles were almost bone white. Naruto clenched his eyes shut in anger and opted to throw this Miss Ninja's so-called distraction. Naruto swung the bunny forward over his head by the ears, however before he could complete his throw, several actions seemingly happened in an instant. He was pinned to the backside of a tree by a masked shinobi with long black hair. The bunny was gently tucked under the arm of the shinobi. The pose contradicted her other hand having several needles positioned at his neck. A female voice from behind the mask harshly whispered, "If you say a word I will kill you." Naruto noticed a slight bit of hesitance behind the female, saying that she would kill him. Perhaps she really wasn't ready to do such a thing. Zabuza and Kakashi had gone into battle while Sasuke and Sakura surrounded the bridge builder. The battle waged on and Zabuza had the upper hand the majority of the battle, even if there were moments where it appeared Kakashi had gotten a leg up on Zabuza. Sakura was muttering to herself in fear, "Damn Naruto, how could he just run off like that?" Sasuke was having trouble not thinking the same thing. The battle had been going for 10 minutes now, and there was still no sign of the blonde. He either ran off or was captured by one of Zabuza's accomplices. Naruto stared the masked shinobi coldly in the face, "When you let me go I will cripple you." The female's expression was unreadable behind the mask, but in a calm voice she replied, "What makes you so sure that I will let you go?" Naruto grit his teeth at her, "You don't have the heart to kill me." The female flinched behind her mask, but did well not to show it, she just hoped it wasn't caught by the boy in front of her. "Naozu, take care of the children," she whispered into the trees. Naruto thought he was seeing double when a shinobi looking like the exact same shinobi he killed earlier jumped up from the forest floor and out into the fray. The one difference the shinobi had was several bandages wrapped around his neck. That was when it clicked for Naruto, the puddle turned red. There was another, and you healed him, didn't you? The female stayed silent and turned her head to the battlefield. However, one should never take their eyes of Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto delivered a vicious knee to her stomach, which caused him more pain than her most likely. This was due to the fact that when her body lurched forward from the knee, she dragged the 3 sharp senbon held as his neck down his chest. It cut right through his jacket and shirt, leaving 3 bloody lines down the front of his chest. Crushing the pain inside of him, he gave the female an uppercut which caused her mask to fly off and for her to fly backwards, which she in turn took the opportunity to land gracefully on her feet. Naruto wasn't one to give an opponent an inch, because he learned in life, give someone an inch they will take a mile. Naruto was charging forward and tackled the black-haired girl to the forest floor. He pinned both of her arms down, thankful that being a male and receiving little actual shinobi training had left him to work purely on his physical strength. He rolled her over the best he could as the girl flailed against him. He climbed up her back and positioned his knee on her right arm and hooked her other arm with his own. He took the spare headband he had from the mist shinobi and tied her hands behind her back. It took quite a deal of struggling to get a secure knot on the girl. When all was said and done, he rolled the girl over onto her back and took his own headband and tied her feet together. She looked up at him with a pleading look, "Please don't do this." Naruto tried to put her words beneath him as the voice in his head said harshly, "She was going to kill you. Kill her. It is only fair." Naruto said to himself quietly, "I can't kill a woman. Not even if the woman was going to kill you." Naruto grit his teeth and inched to his kunai pouch. Pulling one out, he was going to go for the kill. You could do whatever with her, kill her, use her, abuse her. You could force her to follow you, Naruto-kun. Another friend perhaps. Naruto shook his head free of thoughts and went for his second kill of the day as he tried to block out the image of the young girl's face. That was until he heard a scream of his teammate. "Sakura," Naruto said to himself in a panicked voice, recognizing the scream. Naruto quickly looked around for his headband, feeling naked without it before realizing the girl was tied up with it. Naruto quickly put on her discarded Anbu mask and picked up the brunette and jumping into the fray. Sasuke looked slightly tired and his eyes held that of panic. He was crouched on one knee holding his ribs. Sakura was down on the ground, she had been cut along the arm by the shinobi and had a heated expression. Poison, Naruto thought to himself with a frown. Naozu looked torn up, he had a kunai in his shoulder, one in his leg, and he was squinting his eyes as if his vision was blurred. He spotted Naruto in the girl's mask and gasped out, "Haku, help." Naruto's eyes widened at that. Gaozu's vision was so impaired that Gaozu thought since he was wearing the mask, he was Haku. Naruto held the kunai and pulled Haku's hair as she was restrained under his arm. "Say you are going to heal him." Haku continued to look to the floor, not saying anything, which in turn Naruto yanked her hair and forced her to look at him. "Say it." Upon gaining no response from her, still Naruto dragged the kunai down her arm, not hard enough to pierce the skin, but enough to be uncomfortably painful like a rabid cat scratching at oneself. Haku clenched her eyes shut at Gaozu continued to ask, "Haku?" His voice holding more panic than what he originally sounded like. Naruto, in anger at the thought of Sakura dying from poison right in front of him and this shinobi wasn't going to even cooperate, he grabbed a senbon from a pocket on the side of her uniform and stabbed it into her back. "Ah!" She gasped out in panic and pain. "Gaozu, I'm coming to help," she promptly said after Naruto continued to add pressure to the senbon. Naruto charged forward at Gaozu, just in case Haku chose to tell the shinobi to look out. His instincts proved correct when she shouted, "Gaozu, look out." It was too late. Gaozu's eyes widened at the last second and he tried to move, but Naruto was quick enough to rip the bandage on his neck off. The slowly healing wound was torn open, blood splattered on the hunter nin mask Naruto was wearing. Sasuke moved to go in for the kill, wanting to prove himself, however Naruto stopped him. Naruto looked very intimidating with the blood-splattered hair and hunter nin mask, his voice muffled behind it, he said, "Don't kill him, let him bleed out." As he glared at Haku silently as tears swelled in her eyes. Sasuke was afraid for a moment. At times the blonde was able to adopt the same presence Itachi once held when he would walk around the compound after a mission or after talking to his father. It struck a chord in him, one that made him feel fear. "Don't fear what others think of you, Naruto-kun," whispered the voice soothingly, "they should fear what you think of them." Naruto flinched at the voice in his head, it was goading him to kill people almost. He didn't enjoy it, at least, that was all that mattered, right? Naruto marched back over to Sakura and Haku, he grabbed Haku by the hair, "You will heal her." It was obvious it wasn't up for discussion. Haku stared intensely back at Naruto. "No, you can kill me." She nearly shouted, tears swelling in her eyes. She wasn't able to protect anyone, and judging by the looks of things on the lake, she wouldn't be able to protect Zabuza either. Naruto was rather surprised that she would rather die than heal the enemy. "I will let you live if you heal her," he reasoned in a significantly calmer voice. Both tried to focus on the conversation despite the fact Sakura was screaming blood murder next to them and the bridge builder was shaking by a tree. Haku let a tear go down her cheek. "What is the point of you letting me live when you have taken away everything that I live for?" Naruto flinched at that thought. All his life he had wanted a family and here he went and took hers away. Sasuke however watched the scene with pursed lips. He was no longer watching a scene between Naruto and Haku the moment she said that the scene had morphed to himself and his brother. To his frustration, he took place of Haku and Naruto once again took place of his brother. He could tell by Haku's eyes, the eyes just like his own, that if she doesn't find anything to live for, she would live for revenge. Sasuke flinched at that idea. Had he truly not found anything to live for? He buried that idea deep inside of himself, hoping that it wouldn't ever return. "Then live for me." The voice whispered seductively, however something behind it made it far more powerful than normal. "Then live for me." Naruto echoed, but before he realized it the statement was already said. The wave washed over Haku as he said that from behind her own mask. She couldn't describe the feeling, it didn't feel like the boy's voice anymore. It felt like something more was laced in his words, it compelled her to follow him. The idea alone made her furious and yet curious. How could she honestly want to follow a boy who was younger than her on his say-so after he had just killed 2 of the 3 people he lived for? Haku however let her body do the talking and nodded her head silently and moved her arms to Naruto for him to untie them. Sasuke reached out an arm and touched Naruto's shoulder. "Are you sure?" He left the statement open as he drew a kunai. Naruto looked from Sasuke to Haku to a struggling Sakura. The look in Haku's eyes, the loneliness had told him everything he needed to know. "Yes, she trusts me," he said slowly, almost as if he was unsure of himself. He promptly untied her arms, which in turn she took to look over at Gaozu and Kakashi and Zabuza's battle. However, upon looking she wished she hadn't. Gaozu had already bled out, his eyes now lifeless as he laid on the floor. Zabuza was being swept away in a giant vortex, sent at him by Kakashi. That would have been her moment to step in, she had failed him. She looked over at the pink-haired girl whose eyes were wide open, biting her lips in pain, looking as if she was about to go into shock. Just because she failed her current leader didn't mean she would fail her new one. "Since when did I consider the blonde my new leader?" "Sasuke, watch her." Naruto yelled as he took off to Kakashi who, after throwing a barrage of kunai at Zabuza, took to falling face first into the water. Naruto rushed into the water after Kakashi. Well, he didn't like the man that much, there was no reason for him to just die, because one of them couldn't pull him out of the water. Naruto looked over to the mist shinobi stuck up to the tree as he dragged Kakashi out of the water. "Is this what it is like being a shinobi?" he thought to himself with pursed lips. A seductive whisper broke through into his mind as he looked around at his team who he had effectively saved. "No, Naruto-kun, this is what it means to be a hero." Naruto looked at the dead bodies lying around and sighed. "I didn't ask for any of this. Greatness is thrust upon people, Naruto, that is why this happened, that is why you take care of me," the voice whispered soothingly. Naruto could almost feel a caress on his cheek, yet he knew that was impossible. "Take care of you?" he asked, puzzled at the implication. The voice gave out a seductive laugh. "You really should go grab that sword off of that swordsman's body, Naruto-kun, it would be a shame for it to just rust there." Naruto was confused as to why the voice dodged a question, but complied once he rested Kakashi down at the shoreline. Sakura was looking better already, she was sitting up and Haku was doing her job. Sasuke supervising her. Naruto hoisted the blade off of Zabuza's body and rested him on the ground by the shore. The man was dead, a kunai had pierced him through the heart. "Why did you want me to take the blade?" Naruto asked himself in his mind. "Why, Naruto-kun, you asked what I meant by you take care of me, right?" Naruto slowly nodded to himself as he walked over carrying the heavy blade over his shoulder the best as he dragged Kakashi back to the group. "When is your birthday, Naruto-kun?" a seductive voice whispered. Naruto could feel a large buildup of energy form, he hadn't really felt this before, but he crushed the feeling and said, "October 10th, I thought you knew that." "I do know that, Naruto, but do you want to know who I am and the significance of such a date is, Naruto?" asked the voice cheerfully. Naruto's hand began to burn from the blade in his hand and the group watched as Naruto's face went varying emotions and his hand began to smoke. Naruto's eyes widened at the last moment and whispered far too quiet for any genin to catch Kyuubi. Almost as if the blade had skin, it shattered. Not completely, just the sides of the blade. Almost as if it was metal held over a fire too long. The silver metal became black and several random series of cracks appeared on the blade. Almost as if the blade itself had its own volcanic eruption. The blade was blade with many red, orange and yellow cracked lines flowing along them, almost like lava. It didn't produce much heat. However, it produced some, almost like the sword was a living, breathing, chakra being. The blade's lava-like crack seemed to be flowing chakra in a heavily concentrated visible form. Naruto pursed his lips as he looked at the blade. He rested it on the ground, hand no longer aching from the burn, and knelt down with the team. "Naruto, what did you just do to the blade?" Sakura panted, still out of energy from the poison. This voiced the question of the entire group. However, Haku quickly covered for Naruto. Zabuza-sama's blade changes based on the wielder. For example, when I used to touch it, it would become ice cold. Naruto stared at Haku for a moment, gauging whether she was telling the truth, but her eyes said everything. That was complete bullshit, and she was just as curious, if not more so, what happened to her former master's blade. "We need to move," Naruto said, quickly changing the subject away from the blade's changes. "Old man." Naruto called out to the trees, where Tazuna came out from behind a large bush. "Help Sasuke carry Kakashi," he said as he looked down at the ground for a moment, sifting through various thoughts. Naruto, Kakashi sensei said that if anything happened on the mission that Sasuke would be in charge, and if not Sasuke then I would be in charge. Sakura said as she struggled to get to her feet. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Oh, okay, well then miss, I may still have poison in my system, what do you propose we do?" Sakura looked at her feet at that statement and chose to stay silent. Naruto turned to Sasuke and said, "Do you have a problem with me being leader for now?" Sasuke didn't want to openly admit it, but Naruto had done far better than he had today. He just shook his head, at which point caused Naruto to grin. "Okay, let's change things up then. I'll take Haku, Sasuke you take Sakura, a clone of mine will take Kakashi, Tazuna you have to jog the best you can, alright? We won't be stopping. You can set the pace." Tazuna was in no place to argue as he lied about a mission ranking, and now it was blatantly obvious. Tazuna took off into a jog first, setting a decent civilian pace. The place town must be close if he was willing to run that fast for however long they were going to be jogging. Naruto hoisted Haku up onto his back after taking his headband back from her tight ankles. He then took place behind Tazuna, with his clone behind him followed by Sasuke. This was in case Haku tried to run. Haku had lowered her head into his shoulder once they had passed by Zabuza. Naruto looked one last time over his shoulder at Sasuke with a smirk and motioned with his hand to the person he was carrying on their backs. A nudge at the fact that he was having to carry Sakura, which Sasuke opted to scowl at the idea. They all hoped they would be somewhere they could rest soon, they all had a long day. Chapter 5. You need me less than I need you. Naruto sighed, sitting at a kitchen table inside Tazuna's house on the lake. It was fairly early, 5:45 a.m. to be exact. It was especially early for many of them after the stress most of them had all received, everyone else was sleeping in. Gazing over to Zabuza's former blade, now turned his blade that resided in the corner. His mouth flinched as he thought about the blade. He had no idea what it could do, he just knew it had to do something. He didn't know what to think. He knew that the fox could have just been manipulating him, but her voice was so convincing, so encouraging. He squeezed his eyes shut and sipped on a cup of tea. The problem with the fox is, for all he knew, despite it sounding like a female, who knows what type of tricks a demon could pull off. Looking back at the blade, he stared calmly at it in the corner and pursed his lips. The blade gave off a low light in the darkness of the room, the lava-like quality of the red parts of the blade flowed along it. "What are you doing up so early, Naruto-san?" came a calm voice, if somewhat surprised, from behind him. The bridge builder's daughter came out from around the hallway and into the kitchen. Going down under the counter, she pulled out a small bag of coffee to be prepared. The daughter, Tsunami, upon coming up then proceeded to stare owlishly at Naruto. Seeing no way to get out of starting up this conversation, "I am a ninja, I am supposed to be alert and ready for anything." Tsunami, once getting the coffee in the process of being made, grabbed a rag and leaned on the counter as she talked to Naruto. "Really? Your teammates don't seem to share the same beliefs." Naruto shrugged at that, she had caught him with that one quite easily, he left himself wide open. "I'm the leader of the team currently, they can rest for now if they want. Sasuke is severely bruised. Sakura is recovering from poison being in her system. Kakashi is suffering from chakra exhaustion from his battle with Zabuza. Haku, well, in fine physical condition, I practically killed all of her loved ones." Naruto paused in his short overview of what was going on. Tsunami had stopped wiping down the counter with a rag and looked at Naruto with a frown gracing her face. She brushed some of her black locks behind her left ear, effectively keeping it out of her face. "When do you think all of them will be better?" Naruto stared at his tea and began swirling the cup around, creating a tiny whirlpool in the tea. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath hopefully. "Sakura will likely be able to wake up a bit before Kakashi. Haku and Sasuke will likely be up later today. Kakashi could probably get up in a couple days." Tsunami looked at the young boy sitting at her kitchen table with sad eyes. How could a child so young be willing to deal with all of this? The way he talked about death just normally unnerved her. Perhaps they should have hired the samurai from Iron Country instead of shinobi. Naruto caught her staring at him and pursed his lips, looking for something. He nearly snapped at her. He got stared at enough in Konoha, he didn't need to get the luxury here. Tsunami shook her head and sighed, this is just something I've never seen. I mean we have never had shinobi from where around here. You hear stories in passing about shinobi, like when you meet them you don't even know if they are friend or foe. Tsunami paused looking at Naruto. Their stories around her are worse than the vampire folk stories the old men tell in Wave. They say the same rule applies, don't invite them into your house. Yet here you are, sorry if I'm nervous. Naruto's eyes had widened a bit at the woman, that had taken a lot of breath out of her. He felt a bit bad for almost snapping at her, she should have the right to stare. He had heard ninja stories as well, some were even told in the academy. Well their mission completion rate is second to none, they rarely get high-paying clients. They were known heavily for the fact that if a group of shinobi took a mission from a high-paying client, then happened to find where the client's money was located, they would kill the client and take the money. Of course using the system, it was hard for word to get out about that going on. It was happening for years and it was finally weeded out of a shinobi when he was interrogated during a war. He confessed to all of his sins, Naruto sure didn't want to meet Ibiki. However I guess the world must have caught on to the fact that nearly every rich person that went into Iowa hasn't come back out. You're right, you have the right to be nervous. Those things about us you should know, however there are other things we don't want you to see. This is our job, we come and we go. If I had it my way, we would be here today and gone tomorrow. Tsunami pursed her lips as she listened to Naruto speak. Your father hired us Tsunami-san and lied to us. So we should not be trusting you Tsunami, not the other way around. It is blatantly obvious that I need you less than you need me Tsunami-san. The only reason I am here and am dragging my team along is because it is the right thing to do. So take it from me, ninja normally don't give sympathy and we lack honesty, but you can trust me or trust nobody. Naruto stood up and despite his height, he metaphorically speaking towered over Tsunami at the moment. He walked over and grabbed the blade in the corner and trudged himself back up the stairs. Tsunami sighed and poured herself a glass of coffee. She hadn't known that her father had lied about the mission rank. Pretty much everything Naruto had said was spot on. They did need them more than they needed her family. They could very well leave and the bridge would forever remain unfinished. Hopefully she would get another opportunity to talk to the boy. He seemed to be carrying a lot of weight that he didn't expect to have being leader of the team. Naruto sighed as he went up the stairs. The house was rather large, despite the community being in poverty. This was likely due to the fact that Tazuna and Tsunami's late husband had built this house right on the lake. He walked up and knocked on the door, he and Sasuke shared rather loudly before saying meet me in Sakura's room. Naruto then walked a couple doors down to the room Sakura and Haku shared. He knew Sasuke would be coming in a few minutes. However when Naruto walked in he resisted the urge to laugh and pump his fist in the air, like a little kid saying, jackpot. Naruto had walked in on Sakura topless, with Hakura behind her using the medical jutsu that she knew to help Sakura to recover. Nice Sakura, your nipples match your hair color and will soon match your face. Naruto said offhandedly. Sure enough, once Sakura was alerted of his presence she flushed red, Naruto. Don't you know how to knock? She yelled as she crossed her arms in front of her chest, only to make herself wince in pain. Naruto smirked, nope, I'm an idiot remember. Sakura only turned redder at him using the names she called him as an excuse for him to walk in on her half naked. Oh what did you want? Asked the Uchiha who had just walked in through the doorway. His eyes were droopy, his hair was pressed down flat and messy. Naruto openly started laughing, this is too good, I walk in on my teammate half naked and I find out my other teammate is not a morning person, yet he is a ninja. Sasuke announcing his presence of course had caused Sasuke to do a rather embarrassing and undignified impression of a former classmate and fall out of her chair. This of course sounded like a good idea in the beginning, but it only served to hurt her more. She laid on the ground groaning. The resident female doctor in the room, who looked much prettier with her mask off sighed, can you please stop startling her, she is lucky she hasn't hurt herself yet. Haku ran a hair through her hair, it was obvious that the ordeal was starting to stress her out. Naruto sighed, Sasuke sit down on the other bed, Sakura get your ass in the chair. Sasuke complied, however Sakura threw a pillow at Naruto. You just want to see me naked you fucking pervert. Naruto rolled his eyes and stared at her, oh really, you threw the pillow at me, which was your only means of cover. Sakura promptly paled on that note. She tried to make the best puppy dog look she could muster in the pain she was in, can I have my pillow back Naruto? She said with a pout. Naruto laughed, pretty please. He asked her with a huge grin. The other shinobi in the room had glints of amusement in their eyes. It was rather funny seeing a shinobi nervous about her team seeing her naked, rather than being healed. Sakura rolled her eyes, pretty please she reiterated before getting a pillow dropped on her face. Naruto sighed and picked Haku's mask up off her bag and fumbled around with it in his hands, anyway Sakura sit your ass down. Once everyone was situated Naruto began talking. So last night I sent a letter to Konoha requesting another genin team with a well-trained jounin to help us. They should be here later today. I got the hawk this morning that said that they were on their way. Hopefully they can make it here by dinner and we can get control of the situation. Do you know who they are sending? Asked Sakura calmly, between a wince as Haku continued on with medical techniques. Naruto shook his head, not which team, I know it is a team from our year. The thought of Ino coming made him frown, if she came he was sure Sakura would go on about how he had killed Shinobi. You should be careful Haku began, catching everyone's attention. She was currently behind Sakura working on her lower back and ribs. The girl was beat up. Gatu is dangerous. He likely already knows that Zabuza is dead and is hiring another shinobi whose caliber we don't know, but we can expect him to be at Zabuza's level or more. The man has an endless amounts of money and he wouldn't hire someone known to be weaker than Zabuza-sama after Zabuza-sama just lost. Naruto leaned back, holding himself up on his arms, then what can we do? We all got our asses handed to us out there. Well except for me, but why crush the statement with something like that? His statement had the desired effect. Everyone either flinched or looked crestfallen at the statement. How do you propose we beat someone stronger than Zabuza? Look at what Zabuza did to Kakashi. Naruto ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Sakura strained her voice to speak, Naruto you should show more respect to Kakashi-sensei. We are not getting into this now Sakura. He finished with a small glare, which promptly made her shrink back into Haku's expert hands. Sasuke who had been silent this entire time rose up, Haku did Zabuza teach you any methods of training that we could use while we wait for the other team to get here? Naruto suddenly relaxed when he was thinking about how they had been beaten before, he didn't take into account the fact that they would have another team along with them this time around. Haku continued repairing Sakura's claw wound and shrugged, well there are basic things like water walking and tree walking. Most of my training from Zabuza-sama was in utilizing my bloodline and assassination techniques. I am not the greatest frontline fighter because of that. Naruto raised an eyebrow, as did his team and asked the question all on their minds, you have a bloodline. That happened to hit a chord in Haku as she flinched, but nonetheless held up a needle in front of the group before expanding it into a thin plate of ice, before reverting it to a needle and working on Sakura. Naruto grinned, but for more personal reasons. He wasn't completely sure if she was on his side yet or not. However if she was on his side, he had just obtained someone that would help him with a bloodline. Naruto. Came the screech of tsunami from downstairs and it didn't even take long before the four shinobi were rushing down the hall and jumping the flight of stairs. Some of course more slow than others due to injuries. Naruto was in the kitchen quickly with his large blade poised at the intruders until he saw who they were and relaxed. Haku was still on edge, but after seeing both Sakura and Sasuke lower their weapons, she moved closer to Naruto with senbon between her fingers. Naruto sighed, hey guys as he looked over Team 10. Naruto was going to greet them before Haku wrapped an arm around the back of his waist and said, tell them something only they would know. She said as she glared at Team 10. Naruto paused before shrugging a bit and nodded, he then held his blade more at the ready than before. Team 10 were mildly surprised by this, and the pineapple-haired student finally spoke up, I was second to last in the academy. Ino always calls Sakura forehead girl, who in turn calls Ino piggy. Naruto lowered his blade when he heard that spot on. He thought to himself. Haku too relaxed once the questions were answered and moved over to Tsunami in the corner, who had fear in her eyes the entire encounter. She was mumbling things like, all my life I was able to go through living something akin to normal. Then in a couple years everything turns around and I suddenly have 8 ninjas staying in my home. Sasuke noticing Tsunami's shaken state frowned, perhaps we should go outside. The jounin of Team 10, Asuma raised an eyebrow, where is Kakashi? Sasuke appeared that he was going to answer, but Naruto cut in he is suffering from chakra exhaustion, he is in the bed upstairs, for now Sasuke is right. We do need to go over what is going on and Tsunami needs her space. Naruto then walked outside, which in turn caused Haku to pat Tsunami on the back before quickly moving outside after Naruto. Sakura followed suit, having been crossing her arms in front of her chest this entire time, did not do anything for her self-conscious. Neither did Ino's comment, nice forehead. As Sakura seemed to go red and shrink at the comment Naruto shook his head. He quickly removed his jacket as Sasuke and Team 10 were coming out. Put this on Sakura and continue working on her, sit her on the fence on the dock. He ordered Haku who in turn frowned before following the command. As she was walking by, she couldn't help but say, she needs to get used to it. If she can't handle being naked in front of her team, she most certainly won't be able to handle getting naked in front of a stranger. Naruto nodded in silence, quietly saying, I agree, but we can't worry about that right now. Haku went over and put the jacket on Sakura backwards, so it covered her chest. It in addition left her back open to be worked on. Once everyone got situated around by Sakura and Haku on the dock they began the conversation. How exactly did your team get here so fast? Asked Naruto with a frown on his face. He had sent the letter just last night. Asuma took a drag of his cigarette before speaking. Well, when we were called in, we weren't given much mission preparation. The Hokage had pre-made bags for us that contained supplies that most shinobi would take for a standard A-rank mission. He told us to get out here as fast as we could, so we ran for 3 hours before taking a half-hour break to hydrate before continuing on in a jog. We had a bit of a hold up at the bridge as no one was there to be able to carry us over. After waiting a while, a boatman eventually came by fishing and he offered to take us across. My question for you is, how is it that you are all injured save Naruto and this mystery shinobi? Naruto ran a hand through his hair. Well, Sakura was clawed up pretty badly by one of the Mist's demon brothers. He was rather angry after Naruto paused and frowned before continuing. I killed his brother Sasuke, got beat up pretty badly by him as well, but was able to hold his own very well. Asuma's eyes narrowed at the implications. So you ran from the battle. Is that why you're not injured? Naruto laughed at that. Well, that wouldn't make me a very good future Hokage now, would it? The comment seemed to boost the morale of Naruto's teammates. Despite the bad situation they were in, the thought of the blonde boasting about how he would become Hokage one day certainly did bring a smile to their faces. I was busy kicking the shit out of Haku here who tried to capture me. Naruto said with a huge grin. Haku, however, flushed in embarrassment remembering the circumstances. She could sometimes beat Zabuza, yet this genin beat the crap out of her and tied her up. She nearly felt like she was being thrown around like a child does with a rag doll the way she fell out of the tree in battle. That comment, however, seemed to set Asuma on edge. Naruto, perhaps it would be best if you allow me to question her a bit. Naruto rolled his eyes. We are all ninjas here, we know the lingo Sarutobi. No, I won't let you beat the shit out of Haku, in hopes that she gives you information that we already know. Any of the people she knew around here are already dead, and as for Gato, well, we have yet to really even plan for anything against him yet. Asuma frowned. Naruto, I really don't think you can trust a shinobi whose partners you just killed. Naruto flinched when you put it that way. You're right, it is a good thing that she is my prisoner. He thought up relatively on the spot. Asuma raised an eyebrow, but Naruto continued, and as current leader of Team 7, I will vouch saying that she has already been interrogated for any valuable information. The entire Team 10 was mildly surprised at that statement. You're the leader of Team 7 at the moment? Questioned Asuma. That can't be right, the boy was the worst in the academy, for a leader he would be my last choice. Naruto scowled when he saw Asuma's expression. Do you have a problem with my current leadership? Naruto questioned with a glare. He hated it when people underestimated him or thought he wasn't qualified for something that he could do. Asuma looked around at Team 7, Sasuke appeared to be listening to Naruto's words. Haku was currently patching up Sakura's wounds. The kid did appear to have perfect control over his teammate's situation. He shrugged. No, you seem to be handling things fine, it is just a surprise. I would assume that Kakashi would still be in charge. Naruto paused at that, he didn't expect the Jounin to agree with him. Alright, well, currently we decided to try and build a training regime since we are likely going to be out here for a while. Zabuza and his men were tough to fight, as you can see how everyone is injured here. He motioned around to the group. Shikamaru took the opportunity to raise an eyebrow. Everyone is injured except you. Asuma made a move to cover the statement somehow, but Naruto quickly said, that is mainly because my battles were all rather one-sided. I killed the first demon brother because he was chained to the ground. Then Haku underestimated me and got a nice kick to the crotch. Ow. Sakura gasped out as Haku accidentally pressed too hard on a wound. Ah, I'm sorry, Sakura-san. Haku quickly said, taking a cloth and wiping off a bit of blood going down Sakura's back. Naruto smirked in amusement. The final demon brother, due to me having Haku's mask on, assumed I was Haku due to his blurry vision. I forced Haku into helping me, trick him into thinking I was going to help him, and finished him. A silence washed over the group. When Naruto talked about his experiences, he couldn't help but feel bad. He had used cheap deceiving tactics to win his battles. He always assumed shinobi battles were about who could make the most powerful jutsu. Yet here he was on his first mission, and his battles were about who could trick the opponent into doing what he wants. Taiji quickly changed the subject and said, well, Asuma just taught us all tree climbing, maybe we can help you all with that. He suggested between munching on some chips. Naruto nodded his head. Alright, let's go do that, we can't stand around here talking, let's at least get something done. Asuma, can you watch the house and Kakashi? Asuma nodded with a cig in his mouth. Yeah, sure, go on, get out of here. The teams went on, Haku, Sakura, Naruto and Ino being the last to go on. Haku and Sakura went on ahead before Haku paused for a moment and stopped to talk to Naruto. Well, she is getting better, I am almost done with her injuries. She said quietly. When do you think that you will be done with her? Naruto asked with emphasis. Haku frowned. I don't know, an hour maybe. I am no expert doctor or anything. I just thought that I should give you a heads up. Naruto nodded silently before giving her a small hug. Thank you, Haku. Just because she pledged her loyalty to him doesn't mean he couldn't be nice to her. Naruto went on ahead, catching up to Sakura to ask her personally how she was feeling all the while Ino confronted Haku. Ino just opted to glare at Haku for a few minutes as the mist shinobi stared impassively back at her. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I certainly don't like you," she said, using her finger pressing on Haku's chest for emphasis. Haku raised an eyebrow at her. "I don't believe that I care if you like me or not," she said in a much colder voice than what she was used to be talking in. Who was this blonde genin to come at her like that? Ino glared. "Stay away from Naruto," she said possessively. Haku's eyes hardened at that. Was she really that blind? Was that what she was going on about? If she really wanted the boy she would have him. Hell, she stole husbands from their wives only to kill them later on, all the while without having to remove clothes to do it. Haku leaned in close to the blonde and whispered, "Don't worry about Naruto, if I wanted him, I would take him." Ino's eyes hardened and she clenched her fists as Haku finished what she was saying, and there would be nothing that you could do about it. Ino swung at Haku quickly with her right hand, but it was to no avail. In an instant a giant mirror appeared where Haku was standing that was harder than rock. Hitting it even hurt her hand. Looking into the mirror, Ino wished she saw her reflection, but all she saw was the image of Haku holding her arms around Naruto from behind him possessively. Ino grit her teeth and the mirror shattered into tiny shards before they melted through the cracks of the wooden dock. Chapter 6. Don't get confused, I own you. "Hey, Kakashi, are you awake?" asked the chain-smoking Jounin with a frown on his face. The masked man peered his single eye open and groaned, "This doesn't look like a hospital." The chain smoker could only laugh, "Ain't that the truth?" The room was a spare bedroom in the house, it was relatively clean, but nowhere near hospital standards. Not to mention recovering from chakra exhaustion wasn't fun at all. The only way he could express it was having every muscle in your body feel as if it was ripped and was regrowing. A shinobi with a strong will could easily increase his chakra supply that way, as chakra was in its own sense a muscle. The problem would be overcoming the drastic pain that comes along with chakra exhaustion. Pain medication doesn't even help take away the pain. He pitied the silver-haired Jounin and at his bad luck of the draw when it came to a first C-rank mission with his team. "You're not in a hospital, Kakashi, your team carried on with a mission and brought you back to the client's house." Kakashi pushed himself upright and stared at the Sarutobi. "I see, so Sasuke took charge and sent the Hokage a letter requiring assistance then." Taking a drag on his cigarette, Asuma closed his eyes. "I'm afraid not, it wasn't Sasuke who sent the letter." This in turn caused Kakashi to straighten his posture. Did Sasuke get injured and Sakura had to send it? Asuma felt a bit relieved at that, at least he wasn't the only one who was going to be surprised, knowing Naruto had taken charge. No, actually, Sakura and Sasuke both got relatively injured. She was the worst off out of all of you seeing as how you can't recover from poison. Naruto has taken charge and was the one to send the letter to the Hokage. "I don't understand it, Kakashi, what have you been teaching these kids? They are working fantastically as a team it would seem, but they don't even know tree climbing." Kakashi's mind was going a mile a minute and ignored the comment that insinuated his lack of proper training or odd choice of training. How was it that Naruto has taken over? "I specifically told Sasuke to take charge if something happened, and if not Sasuke then Sakura." Asuma frowned, so the team went against a direct order from their leader. He though slowly letting that sink in. "Better yet, how the hell did Sakura recover from poison?" Kakashi asked in surprise. Asuma ran a hand through his hand and scanned his eyes along the wooden floor before speaking. "Well, it would appear that Naruto has taken hostage of Zabuza's former apprentice. It is strange, she seems almost blindly loyal to him. The thing that puzzled me about the entire thing is I stayed to watch the team as they went off to do tree climbing. Haku is overprotective of Naruto, and oddly enough my student was being borderline possessive of the boy." Kakashi looked out the window at the side of the room to spot the group of shinobi down by the shoreline of the house climbing trees. That was rather smart, to keep the house in view in case something happened on either end. They were easy to spot as well, with Naruto wearing bright orange and Sakura wearing pink. Kakashi pursed his lips behind his mask. "I was going to reprimand Naruto the other day for his choice of clothing, and then I look around and Sasuke is wearing blue, Sakura is wearing pink, Yamanaka is wearing purple. Was I really being that blind that I was singling out the mistakes with Naruto that numerous shinobi his age were making? That doesn't explain to me how Sakura is okay though, Asuma," Kakashi said with a sigh. Asuma grit his teeth and squinted his eyes as he put out a cigarette in his hand. "Haku." He gasped out, "She took to healing Sakura, I would assume on Naruto's personal order to her." Kakashi sighed, he needed to speak to his team. He needed to talk to them about following orders and figure out what to do about Haku. "Asuma, can you get me some crutches? I want to go check up on the team personally." "Son of a bitch." Naruto yelled in frustration, slicing the giant blade he held into the tree before him. Everyone around his was practicing tree climbing, except for Ino, Sakura, and Haku. Ino was busy cheering on Sasuke and giving him tips which only served to grate on his nerves. He didn't even say thank you, even though it was with Ino's help that he was progressing. Naruto had tried asking Sakura for help with it since she practically got it in one go and then felt too tired to do it again. Whether this be because of her chakra reserves or her recovery he didn't know. The thing that annoyed him was that Sakura then went on to tell Sasuke any tips that she could give him, but when he asked she said, "You just need to focus, Naruto." Yeah, focus, this is utterly retarded. He thought in annoyance. Shikamaru and Choji had already gone to the water once Haku had told them about water walking. He didn't want to walk out and onto the water just to try and get any tips out of them. Ino had taken to giving Sasuke tips, she knew that she wanted to help Naruto. However, Sasuke was a deeper subject with her. It was not just a cute boy with the looks and money. He was the basis of the rivalry between the two of them. If she gave Sakura an inch and went off to help Naruto over Sasuke, Sakura would come in and give 130% into helping Sasuke. That would easily make her lose this struggle for Sasuke's affection between the two of them. This of course why she was currently mugging Haku with the deadliest glare she could muster. The girl wasn't in the middle of this rivalry, so she was just free to observe the situation. She could tell by the look in her eyes, as time went on Haku gained a better understanding of the situation. That's why Ino was torn right now. Haku had told Sakura that she was done for today and they would continue tomorrow with the remainder of the healing process. Haku took that moment to go over to Naruto and smile. "Naruto-sama?" she asked with a bright alluring smile on her face. Ino wanted to vomit as she watched and heard the interaction between the two. Who the hell does she think he is, Naruto-sama? Ino wanted to pull the girl's long hair and drag her to the floor. Putting herself out there like a slave. Ino could only scowl. "Do you want me to help you with tree climbing?" she said, tilting her head into his line of view. It was rather cute due to the fact she was taller than him. Naruto sighed as he looked up at the tree. "Fine, what help can you give me?" Haku darted a look to Ino over with Sasuke, who looked positively murderous. Haku however felt rather giddy at the fact that she was getting this reaction out of the girl. It was her fault that she decided to become possessive of something that wasn't hers in the first place, right? She moved behind Naruto and began massaging his shoulders as she rested her chin on his shoulder. "Well, from experience," she said quietly, which caused Ino to shift uncomfortably and move to the other side of where she was standing with Sasuke and now Sakura, who had moved over to him when she was done with Haku. She moved closer just enough to hear, but not enough for it to be overly suspicious. "I believe that you would benefit from the use of your shadow clones. They have so many uses, some being more practical than others." At the moment she said practical, she pressed the front of her body up to Naruto's back. It was a rather unexpected move to Naruto, so he turned rather red at the close unexpected contact. Ino grit her teeth and tried to think of anything that would break them up and promptly fell backwards onto her ass with a rather loud ouch. Naruto split apart rather quickly from Haku at that and went over to pick up Ino far faster than anyone else attempted to. Ino sighed as Naruto helped her up and shot a smirk to Haku, who in turn smiled back and mouthed he will be back shortly. Ino pressed her lips together at that and frowned. She faked a stumble when Naruto pulled her up. She fell into a hug with him briefly before backing up. "Thank you, Naruto." She tried to make it sound like she didn't care in front of Sakura and Sasuke. She just didn't think about how that would make Naruto feel. The said boy pursed his lips and walked back over. "What were you saying, Haku?" This time he was a few feet from Haku. This of course caused Ino to stick out her tongue at Haku childishly and throw up a peace sign. Haku just rolled her eyes. "Naruto, can you come over here? I want to show you the footing I usually used when I was learning this." Ino's face instantly turned back to her mugging when she saw Haku rub her hand down Naruto's leg and stick his right foot to the tree. "Alright, Naruto-sama, I need you to channel chakra to your feet until you stick. You need to channel the correct amount so that you don't fly off or anything of that sort. Take your time, there is no need to rush. I will make sure you have this done in the next hour." She made that statement rather loud and let it linger in the air. Sasuke and Naruto had been scaling the tree constantly the past 3 hours. Sasuke had been progressing consistently up the tree, while Naruto hadn't been able to make it more than 8 feet up without flying off. Of course this was likely due to Sasuke gaining insight on what he should be doing and having better control than Naruto. Naruto was a bit surprised when Haku had said that, but it brought a smile to his face regardless. Merely the fact that someone was willing to help him with this was enough motivation he needed to do it. He now couldn't let Haku down with her helping him. A new determination flashed over Naruto's face, and he grinned. "Pick me up, Naruto, sticking wood in me isn't very nice before we really has a conversation." Came a seductive voice with a hint of humor in it. Naruto visibly scowled when he heard the voice and rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't stick any wood in you, Kyuubi." He mentally scowled at that, "Nor will I ever, Fox. I stuck you in wood." An enticing laugh came from deep within, and he could almost feel the fox smile. "That doesn't change the fact that you want to stick wood in me, Naruto-kun." Naruto's eyes widened as the world seemed to become the definition of chaos around him. The trees around him had turned ghastly and aflame. The water had darkened to a nearly black color, reflecting the flames around him. Fish had risen to the top of the water. A large fissure had gone right through wave, from what he could tell. It looked like the fissures on his blades, red-hot lava, slowly moving in the fissure. His friends were no longer around, it was him and the barren chaos of the former forest he was in. He spun around rather panicked at the sight only to come face to face with the same gorgeous, enticing, seductive fiery red-headed woman. She winked at him and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before his world turned back to normal. Naruto held the place where she kissed, similar to a kid who shook a star's hand and claimed he would never wash it again. Naruto was in a daze. Haku frowned, there was a heavy chakra spike and a genjutsu placed over Naruto for a moment and then it suddenly vanished. Judging from his look on his face, she knew she was right. It was just a matter of how it happened. "Naruto, we need to continue," she said with a frown. That snapped Naruto out of his daze with wide eyes and he promptly nodded, "Right, sorry." He turned back to the tree and began to regulate his chakra, all the while talking to the fox. "You better not do that crap again, Kyuubi." The woman could only chuckle, "You loved it, Naruto, you should have seen your face. You were just eatable." Naruto scowled at Kyuubi's choice of words, yeah, you're not tasting nothing." There was a moment of silence, "We'll see now, pick me up." "I'll pass," Naruto said, rolling his eyes. He would pick the blade up on his own terms. Imagine his surprise when Kyuubi said, "Okay." The blade flew into Naruto's hand, getting pulled out of its spot in the tree and flung up into the air as if it was flying. It stuck in at the top of the tree and Kyuubi whispered to him, "If you don't get the blade out of the tree in your next 3 attempts, the forest will burn." Naruto's eyes hardened, despite the fact that everyone stared at the blade in wonder, even Haku who now only had more questions for Naruto. Naruto with even more determination than before grit his teeth and made several clones. "I knew I could get you motivated like the women who would do anything for you. Personally I like the black-haired one, she's dangerous." "Danger is always fun." Naruto grit his teeth as his clones began to run up and down the trees to the best of their ability, some falling and breaking. However, it was all knowledge for Naruto to sort through. "However, remember Naruto-kun, no matter how many women you get with, I will always be the main woman for you because it is simple. I own you." Naruto grit his teeth as the last clone fell to the bottom of the tree and popped into smoke. Naruto sprinted at the tree and stuck to it as if he had been doing it for years. It was amazing what proper motivation could do to a person. He got to the top of the tree in one go and tugged the sword out of the tree and jumped off. Landing in a crouch, Naruto sighed as he looked up and silently said, "You don't own me." Laughter for a good while was the fox's response, which gave Naruto the time to look at Haku's surprised face. That was until Kyuubi responded, "Oh really? Look down." The ground was scorched where he had landed. The man sat down under the large tarp overhanging a fruit stand. The majority of the fruits were no longer good, but things were tough in the land of waves. The man sat with a large black cloak over his body and rested up against a wall with a sheathed sword between his legs. The man had on a straw hat that was casting a shadow over the man's face. Upon closer inspection, the man had blonde hair with a bit of hair on his chin. He had an athletic build and there was part of a red sash visible from a spot his cloak wasn't covering. The man appeared to like belts, judging from several of them on each of his knee-high black boots. Even his blade had a belt around the sheath. He strummed a guitar in front of him and began to sing with a sorrow-filled voice, one filled with guilt and regret. "Is there anybody going to listen to my story? All about the girl who came to stay. She's the kind of girl you want so much it makes you sorry. Still you don't regret a single day." Not many that had walked by had paid him major mind as he sang that short bit, but those that did could tell that the man had lost something. It was a shame that everyone else in the town had lost something as well, maybe if that wasn't the case someone would be willing to listen. The man stood up, leaving his large cloak behind, revealing his cape-like jacket that covered his upper body, but in the back went down near his feet. He calmly walked away, sword strapped to his waist and guitar sealed inside a scroll. The back of his black cape-like jacket had a kanji on the back of it, the kanji for peace. "You seriously expect me to believe that Naruto was just able to scorch the ground when he jumped out of the tree? Better yet, Sasuke. How was he able to beat you up that tree? He should have by far had the hardest time out of everyone in Konoha trying to get up that tree due to his chakra supply," the silver-haired jounin said with a frown. He was in pain and was frustrated, he felt like his team was lying to him, he knew over 1,000 jutsu and he had never heard of one that scorched the ground upon impact with your feet. Especially something virtually sealess, he didn't want to think Naruto was adapting more and more of Kyuubi's power, but so far this was unexplainable. "Really, Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto was having such a hard time getting up the tree and then he made it in one go once Haku decided to help him. Sakura said, trying to convince her sensei they weren't lying to him. "Wait a minute, you never mentioned Haku before?" he asked as his eyes narrowed slightly. Sasuke however took that time to cut in. She didn't really have time to help him, she just had him stick his feet to the tree and find the right amount of chakra. Then he grabbed his sword, which pretty much flew up to the top of the tree. I guess he really wanted to get it down or something, which motivated him to get up the tree. Sasuke had a scowl on his face once he finished saying that. It insinuated that Naruto made it up the tree before him, and while that was the truth, it wasn't something he ever wanted to be known to the students that were in his graduating class. Kakashi swapped a crutch into his opposite hand to run a hand through his hair before taking the crutch back. Alright, well I am interested in a few things, you will answer me, is that clear? At the silence of his students, Kakashi decided he wouldn't fish for a yes sensei. Or something along the lines, he just wanted to get to the bottom of the situation. How did Naruto get that blade? Sasuke sighed, after you passed out in the water, Naruto swam out to keep you from drowning, while I watched over Haku extract the poison from Sakura's body. Once he set you down, I think he felt Zabuza's sword would just go to waste staying on that tree, so he took it. Kakashi was getting rather frustrated at his team's lying. This is not the time to be messing around, the blade looks nothing close to Zabuza's former blade, I would know he nearly killed me with it. Not one of his most pleasant memories either. The sight of the giant cleaver coming down on his head was not a pretty one. Sasuke crossed his arms over his chest, what exactly is the point of asking us if you don't bother to believe us when we tell you the truth? Kakashi paused once Sasuke said that, was he really overthinking things that badly? However, if what Sasuke said was true then, that would mean Naruto somehow changed the blade. The question is how exactly? Alright, I apologize, I'm in a lot of pain right now and am rather frustrated that my specific chain of command was completely reversed when I was injured. He let his words linger for a moment, hoping they would sink in telling them not to do it again. Anywhere, where are Naruto and this Haku woman? Sakura appeared to cheer up at the mention of Haku, which Kakashi caught. I know where they are. She said rather cheerily. She was likely going through a phase some patients go through when their doctor saves their life. It didn't appear to be anything fanatic however, so there was no need to worry. The group followed Sakura out to the clearing by the lake, where Naruto, Team 10 and Haku were all located. Most of them were soaking wet, besides Haku, who had a glint of amusement in her eyes. However, the scene was a strike at his pride. She saved his student's life, and she taught his students more than he had taught them in about a day and a half that he hadn't taught them in weeks. The thought was annoying in its own right. Naruto was standing shakily on the water, with several clones surrounding him doing the same, which caused Kakashi to raise an eyebrow. He was surprised that Naruto would do such training, he almost felt as if his student was cheating. However, then he would have to resort to calling himself and an entire clan, even his best friend, a cheater. Still, nonetheless, it was an impressive feat. He was surprised that he wasn't using more clones. Kakashi closed his eyes and thought to himself for a moment. If Naruto used this tactic, he could advance faster. The problem falls in the fact that he may advance so fast that he would pass his students so much that they would all feel behind and feel weak in comparison. He didn't know whether he should support the growth of his student or hold him back to keep him in check with the growth of his team. To him it was a tough decision. He saw a lot of himself in Sasuke, and he naturally expected the boy to succeed to greatness relatively quickly under his guidance. However, exceeding to greatness means nothing if every day of training a genius does, a hard worker does a 50-day equivalent in the same amount of time. Kakashi pursed his lips behind his mask as he repeatedly saw Haku catch Naruto if he was going to slip and fall into the water. It was obvious who the original was. Sasuke. Sakura, go ask Team 10 how to start this exercise. It is another basic chakra control exercise, you all will do fine. It would be best to test yourself by the edge of the lake and trying to find the correct amount of chakra to keep yourself afloat. Sakura seemed to realize instantly what Kakashi was getting at, yet said something that caused Kakashi to try and mask his displeasure. Like Haku had Naruto stick his foot to the tree to find the proper amount of chakra before running up it, right? Kakashi closed his eyes and chuckled, yes, like Haku. He finished the last part and quickly began to carry himself out there as best as he could. Kakashi continued to carry himself to the water and with a feat of impressive chakra control, kept himself in the crutches on top of the water as if it was solid ground. Haku turned her shoulder as she saw Kakashi approach. It was relatively surprising that the Jounin appeared to be having no trouble at all keeping afloat on the water. Part of her hated the man for what happened to Zabuza, but another part of her told herself that if she got into battle with Kakashi here and killed him, despite Naruto's apparent dislike of the man, Naruto would hate her. Thus goes the cycle of hatred in the shinobi world. Shinobi get even. You do realize that Naruto would likely have an easier time learning if he had the chance to try and find the necessary chakra amount to stay afloat before going out this far into the lake. Kakashi said with his casual eye smile. This of course nearly caused Naruto to slip. Haku had caught him before he even got knee-deep in the water, but that didn't stop him from being annoyed. What the hell? You mean that all this time I wouldn't have to have been freezing my ass off? Haku, why didn't you tell me about that? Haku rolled her eyes. Personally, I learned this over a hot spring in the winter. Every time I fell in it would feel as if my skin was on fire. I learned this relatively quickly. Maybe if you dispelled your shadow clones already you would be done. Haku said as she tossed Naruto up only for him to shakily land on his hands and knees in the water. Hey, pick me up, that shit isn't funny, I am just about to dry off. He said, unable to look at either of the seasoned shinobi behind him. Kakashi grinned and booted Naruto in the back, causing him to fall face first into the water, and he quickly returned to his injured position. Haku, while finding the scene rather funny, finally realized the true meaning behind it when Naruto came up sputtering. What the? Who kicked me? He yelled in frustration, now soaking wet and trying to pull himself out of the water. Kakashi raised his only visible eyebrow and lifted a crutch. I'm in no shape to be even moving my legs for more than walking. Naruto, who do you think kicked you? Haku proceeded to purse her lips and give Kakashi a glare when Naruto turned to her. Kakashi in turn gave her a classic eye smile before speaking. Haku, would you mind helping Ino and Sakura while I speak with Naruto? Give you some time to cool off, they are down a ways near the shore under the shade. There was an underlying message behind Kakashi's words, which Haku had picked up on. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an order. The challenge she gave him when she looked in his eyes was blatantly clear to any seasoned shinobi. You're in no position to be ordering me around. Naruto sighed, he didn't notice the hidden message, however he did notice Haku's apprehension. Don't worry Haku, they probably need more help than I do at the moment, especially Sakura since she just started I think. You should go help them. He finished his suggestion to Haku with a smile that shattered any apprehension Haku had. If she was going to serve Naruto better than she served Zabuza, she should at least listen to him. She could virtually travel faster than the speed of sound anyways with this much water around her. Mirror transportation had its advantages. She would just keep Naruto in her sights. Haku nodded her head, alright Naruto-sama. She said quickly, slightly displeased that she had to leave him to help Sakura and Ino, but that was what he wanted her to do so she would do it. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the Naruto-sama part. Has Naruto really gotten her to be blatantly and blindly loyal to him in this short time? Naruto, I need to talk to you. Kakashi said, slowly frowning under his mask at what he just saw between the boy and Haku. Naruto merely rolled his eyes at his teacher. Yeah, I gathered that when you came over here. You rarely talk to me if you aren't reprimanding me about something I did. Kakashi looked away from the cold truth about his neglect of his student, you know she is right. You would probably be done with this exercise if you dispelled your clones. Naruto frowned, yeah well I can't be passing out on the job. I have been the one keeping the team together, he said, putting emphasis on if I appear weak, I am afraid the team may fall apart. Kakashi's gaze softened at that, maybe I have been underestimating the boy. He looked around the area with a frown on his face. Naruto had been a better leader to the team than he had been on their first real mission. While he was out of commission, he practically forced teamwork upon everyone. He was able to turn an enemy into a follower, but more importantly a friend. He wasn't going to play the ignorant card. If there was one thing the boy really needed in his life it would be friends. That was one of the problems he had been avoiding addressing with Sasuke. The boy believed that he could get by on his own and would refuse any reasoning that he would try to throw the boy's way. He pictures Itachi as the height of strength in the ninja world, which wouldn't be very far off, but Sasuke's brother does have a flaw in his shinobi way. He has a lot of power, likely more than even himself, but what does he have it for? He has no one to protect, no one to defend. What good is power if you have no one to use it for? Naruto looked at Kakashi curiously as the man aimlessly looked around. Kakashi eventually turned his head back, well you wouldn't be under such strain if you dispel the clones one at a time Naruto. It makes it easier for you to file the information. Sort of like a stream going down a drain, rather than a tidal wave that way. Naruto looked puzzled for a moment, but took Kakashi's advice for once. What could it hurt? One by one clones popped, leaving a fogginess over the water for a moment before disappearing. For Naruto it rapidly became easier and easier for him to stand on the water, as if he had been practicing for days. By the time he was done he could have sworn he could stay on top of the water while doing backflips. The idea of getting a technique such as this so quickly made him gain a huge grin across his face. The idea that he beat Sasuke in doing something by a mile was something that he was proud of. Kakashi smiled at the amount of joy that came across his face. Perhaps this was the look that Obito would have given if he had ever beaten him at something, besides being a good teammate and a good friend. Naruto, I was originally going to reprimand me for taking charge of the situation and for bringing Haku along, right? Naruto cut Kakashi off with his accusation. Kakashi sighed, originally. Yes, that was the case. However, I believe I have underestimated you. You have done a lot and kept the team organized, I shouldn't get mad over that. You did a good job. Kakashi felt guilty when the borderline shocked look of surprise came across his face. Was he really that open about how he underestimated Naruto? Kakashi choosing his words carefully, biting on his lips while he thought over how he wanted to say things. This probably isn't the proper thing to do in these situations, but how would you like to be the designated leader of the team when I am not around and the designated leader for the remainder of the mission? Naruto's eyebrow raised at being the designated leader of the team when Kakashi was away, but for the remainder of the mission. He had to hold himself from gaping when Kakashi announced that. Not trusting his voice at the moment, he numbly nodded his head. He swallowed some spit that built up in his mouth and took a deep breath before speaking. Well, I just have to ask why Kakashi-sensei. He added the title as a late afterthought. If his supposed sensei was going to recognize him and admit to his mistake and try to make up for it, then he would try to put aside their differences and try to move forward. Kakashi swallowed his pride and with a sigh he spoke. Well, it is fairly apparent that you have taken charge of this mission and have been doing a fantastic job. With Zabuza out of the picture and no danger I can foresee in the future, I believe I can trust your judgment with training the teams as a group and you have my full support. However, I would like for you to keep me posted on any actions you choose to do. Naruto took a moment to let that all sink in and nodded. Alright, he said slowly with a frown on his face, still not believing it to be completely true. Kakashi nodded and turned to walk away, letting one last message drift through the air on his walk back to the house. Be careful, Naruto, I was going to talk to you about Haku, but now I just don't want to see you getting hurt. I don't get why you are so upset, Ino. So what if Haku helped Naruto? Sakura asked as she was quickly getting the hang of the water walking. She was having a harder trouble balancing than she was controlling her chakra output to keep her above the water. So what? Sakura, how can you say that? Naruto is your teammate. Suddenly this girl is just going to come in here and start feeling all over Naruto. Did you see the way she rubbed her hand down his leg? The way she was massaging his shoulders and whispering in his ear? Ugh. Ino picked up a rock and chucked it as far as she could out into the water. The rock making a rather large splash and Ino sat herself down on a rock near where Sakura was practicing. Sakura stayed silent as she listened to her friend and rival rant about the girl. I just don't get it, why would Naruto even let her touch him like that? He has always been so clueless about girls before. She exasperated with a frown. Sakura shrugged, I don't think she was making a move on him or anything, Ino, this is Naruto we are talking about. I mean sure, he's been clueless about girls, I mean, look at Hinata. She has liked him for years and Naruto hasn't noticed. I mean I guess it is partially her own fault for not bothering to approach him, but still. Even if she was making some sort of move on him, I doubt he knew how to react if a girl started to touch him. Ino scowled, no. He would know what to do. She threw another rock into the water. Sakura had turned to Ino with a raised eyebrow when she said that. How do you know that Naruto would know what to do, Ino? Questioned Sakura. She had stopped standing on top of the water and opted to stand on a rock nearby in shallow water in case her concentration slipped. Ino frowned, she couldn't openly say something about what happened between the two of them. Ino shrugged, I just have a feeling that Naruto would know what to do if a girl ever came onto him, he did make that ridiculous henge after all. Ino lied through her teeth. Sakura frowned, why are you so interested who comes onto Naruto anyway? Have you finally given up on going after Sasuke? Sakura finished that thought with a piercing gleam in her eye. The thought that she may finally no longer have to compete for Sasuke's affection. Ino promptly squashed that theory though when she said, as if forehead, I am just annoyed that Naruto is getting attention from this random girl, yet Sasuke isn't giving me or you any attention. It was a half-truth. She wasn't just annoyed, she was borderline furious that Haku had moved in and was effectively taking Naruto away between her fingers. She made sure that she was going to talk to him one of these days while out in Wave. Sakura sighed, look Ino, Haku may have some rough spots, but she saved my life, I don't think there is anything to worry about with her, she is a strong kunoichi. You should be happy that Naruto has someone like her possibly going after him. Sakura flinched a bit on the inside. She used to remember when she was the target of Naruto's affections. That seemed to stop once they had gotten on a team. Now Naruto could look at her nearly naked and not even be fazed. The thought made her shrink a bit. No one even seemed fazed by her being naked, not Naruto, not Sasuke, nobody. Ino threw another rock out to the water, whatever, I don't think she is good for him. I think that she may be too skilled of a kunoichi for Naruto. Haku had snuck up on the pair and said calmly after Ino's statement, yes well I believe that a skilled kunoichi would only help further Naruto-sama's progression as a shinobi. Not to mention you are both right, I am far more skilled than either of you or both of you combined for that matter. Ino turned around with a glare, great, the person I least wanted to see, at least since she is here, it means she isn't with Naruto. She thought with a frown on her face. Sakura seemed to address her thoughts when she said, Haku? I thought you were helping Naruto. Sakura asked, surprised that the shinobi had snuck up on the two of them. Mildly afraid due to the truth in her statement and idly wondered how long she had been listening in on their conversation. Naruto-sama appears to be finished with water walking. She motioned a ways down the lake where Naruto was talking to Kakashi after having dispelled his clones. He was hopping up and down on the water perfectly fine. Ino believed that Naruto was done, he got tree climbing done relatively instantly the second Haku started helping him. That of course only served to frustrate her more. She was helping Sasuke for at least an hour, and while he made progress, he didn't get anywhere close to getting up the entire tree in one go. The image of Haku's comment moments ago sank in about her being better than her and Sakura combined. She crushed the idea and quickly asked, "Why do you call him that?" Haku gave a fake smile, "Call who what Ino-chan?" Ino grit her teeth but tried to remain calm, "Don't call me Ino-chan, and you know what I am talking about. Why do you call Naruto Naruto-sama?" Haku chose to not look at Ino when she responded, trying to be blatantly disrespectful. She walked out on the water, allowed a foot to sink a bit when it came near Ino, allowing a bit of extra water to splash onto Ino. Simple, I pledged my allegiance to Naruto-sama and I shall treat him how a person like him should be treated. Ino forced herself to smile as she ground out, "Oh, so you're his slave then. I understand." Haku had to fight down the flinch, it was one thing to be thought of as a shinobi tool. All shinobi of a village were tools of the cages, an extension of a cage's will. It was a low blow for Ino to call her a slave, and she knew the girl knew it as well. There was a fine line between being a female slave and a tool. However, opting to take the bait and rework the conversation in her favor. She wasn't about to let a foolish girl who couldn't decide which boy to chase try and run this conversation. "I wouldn't call myself a slave, I have given my allegiance to him however, so like a shinobi of a cage I am an extension of his will. Similar to how you genin do your D rank missions for your Hokage. However, I guess if I wanted to delve deeper into it, I guess I am the closest person Naruto has ever been with in life so far." Ino picked up a rock, she just wanted Haku to give her a reason to throw it at her, "I really doubt that. I am sure that there have been people around Naruto that have been closer to Naruto than others. I am sure there may even be those that have been with him on a more intimate level." Haku paused at that, she didn't have a direct comeback to that. The message was clear as day, but Sakura was forcing it to be explained. "What do you mean intimate level, Ino?" Sakura asked, eyes wide, was she really implying that Naruto could already be going around having sex at their age? Hell, the only thing she had close to any sexual activity was when she spent the night over at Ino's and they practiced kissing. "Not one of my fondest moments looking at how we act with each other today," she thought with a frown. Ino maintained Haku's gaze the entire time while talking, "Well, you know, Sakura, how much do we really know about Naruto? I mean, he likely has people that are family to him, but don't forget that bastardized version of a henge. He must have had someone he knew be with him on an intimate level at some point." There was a silence amongst the girls, Haku and Ino didn't avert their gazes, while Sakura let that tidbit of information about Naruto sink in. Haku was the first to remove her gaze from Ino, this was a battle she didn't expect to lose. She never thought that Ino and Naruto had ever been together on an intimate level. However, she wanted this battle of words to finish up on an even note, "Well, that is good, I suppose, he is rather cute and he is strong. If he has been intimate before, he will at least know what he is doing." Ino had thought she won up until that point. She thought that her comment had put claim on Naruto. It had only added fuel to a fire. Haku sighed, "Well, I'm going to go look and see if Naruto-sama needs any help with learning a jutsu or something along those lines. You two appear to have the hang of water walking. Sakura, don't strain yourself." Haku then disappeared by melting into the water. Sakura was the first to overcome her surprise, "Wow, do you really think she is going to make a move on Naruto tonight?" Ino had her head held down, "I don't know, Sakura," remembering a saying her mother often told her when she had been instigating fights at school. "You weren't just playing with fire, Ino, you soaked the matches in gasoline." Naruto sighed, once he had taken up his post as leader of the team, he decided to tell Kakashi that he would go into town. He wanted to see how things were down in the port town that Gato ran. If he was going to be saving these people, he wanted to see whom he was saving. He didn't know what he was hoping to see, when he got there he felt at home. The problem was in order to feel at home, then everyone else would have to be miserable, because when he is at Konoha he is miserable, but he can't call it home. He is ignored while everyone else goes on with his or her lives. Here, he was at home because while everyone was going on with their lives, they were all miserable. It may have made absolutely no sense to the average person, but to him it made perfect sense. However, he didn't want this to last, the more he looked around, the children trying to kick around a deflated ball. He knew he had to help these people, it was just a matter of how. He walked around aimlessly for the past 10 minutes before he walked past a fruit stand and heard voice carrying a tune through the surrounding area. "Is there anybody going to listen to my story? All about the girl who came to stay. She's the kind of girl you want so much it makes you sorry. Still you don't regret a single thing." Naruto stopped when he heard the voice. Across from the fruit stand inside a small pub inn there was a man inside. He was the one singing. Naruto didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but he wanted to learn more about the people he was going to save. Well, he had to start somewhere. He walked up to the blonde man at the table and sat across from him and calmly said, "I'll listen." Haku had been wandering around the town aimlessly after she had heard from Kakashi that Naruto was in the town trying to connect and learn more about the people. She wanted to slap the man. Sure, Naruto was strong, but if Gato hired someone else of Zabuza's caliber, he could very well be screwed. She had searched through several areas of the port town. However, once she thought all hope of finding the blonde was lost and she would have to wait till he came back to the house to talk to him, she found a head of blonde hair in the window. She knew Naruto must have been the only blonde-haired individual besides Ino in the entire village. Everyone in the port town seemed to have dark hair colors, nothing that stood out. The closest thing was a light brown, and even that was far away from blonde. She tried to block out the idea that there was another similarity between Naruto and Ino, it still stung a bitter loss at the argument. She just hoped her final comment was able to get across to the girl and make her thing. When she rushed into the pub, she paled instantly. She was hoping to spot Naruto to talking to your everyday village fisherman. Imagine her surprise when she spotted Naruto speaking to the only man she had personally met besides Kakashi to best Zabuza in combat. Or in peace. Naruto, Haku said hesitantly. She didn't like being in Peace's presence. Zabuza had told her about the man in various stories from his past. While he was usually known to be a good guy, there was something off about him. Naruto had spun around when he heard his name being called by Haku. "Oh hey Haku, why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be helping Ino and Sakura?" Haku stood at the doorway doing her best to avoid Peace's gaze. "Yeah, but I think we should go back to Tezuna's house, they were going to start preparing dinner soon." She lied straight to her new master's face. She hated doing it, but she would do anything to keep Naruto safe. Naruto frowned, "But I was just about to listen to this man's story. I want to learn more about the people I am going to be trying to save." Haku pursed her lips. "Naruto, I don't think this man is native to Wave Country." She did her best to stay focused on Naruto when Peace raised his eye and finally acknowledged the girl as someone more than your average shinobi. Not many people outside of the Mist Village know of him, and she obviously had to know something with that open-ended statement. Naruto spun around. "Wait, so you don't live here?" he questioned the blonde swordsman. The man stared at Naruto with calculating eyes before responding with his own question. "If I am not native to Wave, would you not listen to my story?" Naruto frowned. He wanted to learn more about the people of this port town. However, he could have approached anyone on the street and asked him or her what happened. Yet he came to this man because he interested him. Haku prayed that Naruto would say he didn't want to listen and that Warren wouldn't openly move to cut the boy in half. Zabuza called the man violent, but she could never tell if he was telling the truth or if there was an underlying message to his words. Perhaps they were rivals or something along those lines. Naruto, much to Haku's displeasure, shook his head. "No, it doesn't matter, I am rather interested in what you have to say." Warren leaned back and crossed his arms and gave his formal introduction to the two. "Alright, my name is Peace, Warren Peace." He put emphasis on his name, causing it to sound like War and Peace, which caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow. He thought he had a weird name on the basis of a maelstrom or ramen topping. Haku clenched and unclenched her hands. This was the place she least wanted to be at the moment, but it would be even worse to leave Naruto alone with the man. Once Warren had seen the two of them situated, he leaned forward on the table, his face coming close to the candle that decorated it. The flames licked his face, casting a shadow on the upper part of his face, while his mouth was completely brightened. "Where do we begin?" Naruto listened intently as Warren began to tell the story. He personally was wondering if the story was about him or just this character he is talking about. In the Mist Village, a shinobi nation in civil war, a child was more likely to die on the streets before he would even get his education. The families in these times often struggled, wondering if they would be able to put food on the table each night. The people were in a recession. The single parents, of course, had it bad, pulling in fewer income to support their families. However, the majority of the two-parent families were severely flawed. Many of the men and women resorted to cheating on their spouses due to them not being able to have enough energy when they got home to do anything of the sort. The people were on a downhill slope and there were no signs of the people getting back up for a long time. The children in the village often joined the ninja academy whether their heart was in it or not. That was where the most money was. This of course turned into more of a problem than a benefit. With the graduation requirements of killing your best friend, who could blame them? You ended up having classes full of children who didn't want to lift up a knife to defend themselves against a shinobi onslaught, and then normally one or two children with no qualms about having to kill the shinobi in the class. It usually ended in a bloody mess, with few children standing and many being scarred for life. The parents didn't care, they continued to send their children in. Saying things like, "Honey, it is fine, I know some children have had some bad luck in the past, but our boy is strong." Imagine their surprise when one day a shinobi is on their front doorstep asking the parents to come in and identify the body. Way to boost morale, right? Naruto already had a pained expression on his face from the things this man was saying. It was almost as if parts of his life were being described by this man. It made him wonder for a moment if he would feel more at home in the mist. Haku on the other hand was staying quiet, repeatedly tapping her fingers on her soft skin. She didn't like hearing about the harsher parts of her past, and this man wasn't pulling any punches. You often had children on the street after they had ran from their homes. They would be afraid of what their parents would do if they found out that they had dropped out of the academy, afraid to die. You could see them in the dark alleyways of the towns, usually in groups gathering scraps just to live. This however left them wide open, with the hospitals being taken up by the Mist Country soldiers, there was no room for the everyday people. Of course disease broke out. If you were a shinobi, you could handle it, the disease appeared to have been targeting people with low chakra reserves anyways. The only way for a civilian to get the proper attention he needed was to have a shinobi as a family member fight the chain of command to have their family member be healed. Or they would have to try and leave the village in order to try and find help elsewhere. This of course brought about criminals, the only word I could give them off the top of my head. They would gather shinobi that had turned missing ninja from various nations and teach them how to treat the disease. The symptoms of the disease weren't pretty, however it was quickly becoming the norm around the civilian populace. Black spots and pain. Those were the only symptoms. The doctors in hospitals often said they were contracting a disease that gave them muscle death. A disease that could be simply cured by a chakra transfusion and a small supply of soldier pills. However, no one would help. So the civilians, willing to do anything to stop the pain, would go to these criminals, with all the money their families have, in order to try and buy themselves out of this disease. They wanted to be cured. They would do it at the cost of their families starving the majority of the time. Not to mention what was going to happen to them if another member in the family contracted the disease. Or inside as a barmaid came up to the table, she had been listening in on the story, seeing as how business as usual was incredibly slow. She had no idea how she was going to pay off Gatu come the end of the month. She was already behind 2 months and she wasn't in the mood to become some thug's whore again. That was why she was rather relieved when the man had given her the amount of money for a regular meal without even ordering anything but water. Of course he had asked her to sit down with him as well, but it wasn't like she had anything better to do. Once the barmaid was down and Warren had taken a few sips of his water, he had continued on with his story for his listeners that were entranced with the harsh realities of the Mist Village. So on to the main character of the story. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that, isn't he supposed to say now on to the hero of the story? Until he paused. Unless he is not a hero. The boy went by the nickname of Peace, rather contradicting with his first name practically meaning war, and he had taken to becoming a shinobi on his mother and father's insistence. His dad was a shinobi while his mother stayed at home taking care of him and the house. She often took to cheating on his father, it was through pure strokes of luck that the man didn't find out. It was punishable by death for a civilian woman to cheat on a shinobi spouse. Ironically enough, the law didn't go both ways. His father was blatantly always sleeping around. It had come to the point that once his father had brought home a woman, that his mother had the last straw. She flipped and left late in the night, unable to withstand the man who she was forced to be with. If only she was able to take her son along. So naturally the father took to drinking while the boy went on to participate in the academy. He would come home, only to have to rush to his room in hopes that his father wouldn't spot him and beat the crap out of him. It was no point trying to fight back against a man who wouldn't even feel your punches until he was throwing up the following morning over a toilet. Peace had quickly learned that if he didn't want to get beat up, he should start making his way home around 5 in the afternoon. The man usually drank himself to sleep by 5:30. Peace had excelled when going through the academy. He was a year ahead of his soon-to-be rival Momochi's Zabuza. The name shot up both Naruto and Haku's heads. Naruto was surprised that this man knew Zabuza, perhaps it wasn't such a good deal to stop and listen to a stranger's story, no matter how intriguing. Haku was mildly surprised, she gathered that the man and Zabuza knew each other, it was merely rather surprising they were rivals. The barmaid looked utterly confused when she had seen the recognition come across the teenager's face. But the death of 3 of the Mist 7 shinobi swordsmen, 2 of the places being filled by their newest recruits, one being Aim. The other being a shinobi that grew to be one of the most feared shinobi from the Mist due to his blade, Samahata. His name was Hoshikage Kisame. As both Peace and Zabuza grew as shinobi, both aspiring to be the shinobi to fill in the last open spot with the swordsman, their rivalry caused the two to improve in leaps and bounds. It caused one of them to become the youngest of the 7 shinobi swordsmen to date. The air around the room suddenly got thick and heavy as Peace reached to his side and gently set his blade on the table before everyone well sheathed. It appeared that Peace had the clear advantage over Zabuza due to his weapon of choice. A living sword that his father had passed down to him, named Noctis. Despite Peace disliking his father, the blade was damn good. The man couldn't help but give a grin to everyone. It was obvious that the blade was one of the man's prides and joys. The blade was a long black metal katana with a living red eye near the hilt. As he said this, he unsheathed the blade to show the truth to this statement. It solidified that this truly was his story. The blade was often sheathed, for when the blade could see it would constantly be casting genjutsu on its enemies. Oren paused for a moment, judging whether or not he should tell the two shinobi before him. He knew that the two of them were the shinobi sent here to protect the bridge builder. However, not one to leave his story open like that, he quickly gave a definition directly to the barmaid. Ninjutsu is a ninja technique that casts illusions over people. The blade could take away an opponent's depth perception. It often made them stumble. When an enemy thought he was moving to evade an attack, he could very well have been walking right into it. It nearly rendered its opponents blind. When they think they may have been actually hitting its wielder, they could be swinging aimlessly at air. The blade had caused Peace to be a respected shinobi, especially among the shinobi swordsmen, seeing as how he was only bested by one shinobi and was equal with another. The blade had its counters, those with enough chakra could just overflow the genjutsu. There were those like his friend Zabuza who could simply fight without needing to use his eyes, effectively rendering the genjutsu useless since he relied on sound. Finally, there was Kisam's blade, in which was Peace's ultimate enemy. Whenever the two fought, Peace's genjutsu would be absorbed by the shark's blade, granting him near limitless chakra during their battles. The thought caused him to momentarily scowl. However, when in real combat, his blade coated in poison finished battles with one stroke that rarely ever missed. So as years went by and the mist slipped farther and farther into poverty. Peace's father had passed away, his mother still had never returned. A flicker of sadness came across his face at the thought of his mother, but the continuing of his story quickly masked it. It was beginning to become apparent that Peace was going to be the shinobi chosen to join the swordsmen. However, upon the return of a fling he had in the past came to him with his child, he didn't know what to do. The woman was a one-night stand. In the mist, one-night stands happened all the time. It was a way to keep your head out of the gutter for a half hour each night. He was stuck between pursuing his dream and manning up to take care of his newborn son. He chose the later after thinking about it long and hard. No matter how much he wanted to achieve his dream, he knew what it was like growing up with lousy parents. There was no need for him to bring that upon his own flesh and blood if he could prevent it. Zabuza went on to join the 7 shinobi swordsmen. Peace went on to raise his child with the support of the shinobi swordsmen whose respect he had earned. His family had found peace in a village in civil war. It didn't last long, despite growing to love his wife far more than he ever anticipated he would since she was a one-night stand. It didn't stop him from doing what he felt was right. That was why when a couple years later, after he had stopped running for the 7 shinobi swordsman's seat, that when a plot to take out the Sandai Mizukichi came around, he was all for it. His unique blade had nearly brought the fall of their corrupted leader and his reign over the mist. However, in the last moments of battle, the Sandai Mizukichi expressed exactly why he was the strongest shinobi in the mist. 3 of the 7 shinobi swordsmen, Raiga, Zabuza and Kisame, then himself a swordsman in all but name, plunged their blades through the Mizukichi. The Mizukichi merely laughed. He casually walked through all 5 of them as if he wasn't solid, merely phasing through the swordsman. He had strolled over to the window and turned to the 4 of them before speaking calmly, "Your lives are over, gentlemen. I hope it was fun for you while it lasted. Enjoy life on the run, I will be seeing some of you soon." The Mizukichi had shot a look at Kisame when he said that, but then disappeared. The only thing left behind was a smoking pile of flesh near the window. It didn't look good with them standing by it, and the successor of the Sandai Mizukichi, Yugura, the Jinchuriki of Sanbi, came barging in ready to fight. So being tired from battle, they did the only reasonable thing left to do, they fled as far and as fast as they could. Zabuza was the first to break off from the group, stopping by to pick up his young female apprentice. Naruto got wide-eyed and looked over to Haku when that was said. Haku seemed to pale at the notion that Peace knew exactly who she was. The barmaid paused for a minute before asking a question. "Wait a minute, so you're..." She pointed at Haku, unable to find the right word she wanted to say. Haku nodded with her eyes closed. She had been having trouble staying in her seat listening to her former village's past. Add to the fact that she was directly in the story, someone made her want to get up and go. The death of her former sensei still fresh in her mind, she wasn't having a good time sitting there. Peace noticed the distress on Haku's face. Despite himself wanting to finish the story, he decided to cut it short. "I am afraid I have to leave." Naruto looked like someone had kicked his puppy, if he had one. "What? No. We still didn't get to hear the rest of the story. What else happened to you?" Naruto sounded almost like a kid being read a story before he got tucked into bed. Oren gave a weak smile. "Well, for a long time people said Yugura, the Yandai Mizukichi, caught up to Peace and killed him. Others said they fought and Peace survived. Although how he lived and where he traveled from that point is a story for another time." He finished the last part with a small smile. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. That was frustrating. The story to him was really good, it was interesting hearing about the troubles of other countries. The man picked up his blade and straw hat and vanished in an instant. No shunshin or leaves floating around, just vanished. The only thing left of his presents was a small stack of money in front of the barmaid, with on the front, "Thank you for listening to my story, spread the word please." The money was at least enough to cover a few months' pay. Needless to say, the barmaid was extremely giddy and would be willing to spread the word of his story to anyone that came in the pub willing to listen. Naruto stood up and stretched his arms. "Do you think we will ever see him again?" Haku scowled at that thought. The man put her on edge. She didn't like being around him, but the cold hard truth about the situation was, soon. What if Naruto left tied to the log and chunin exams? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.